need to remember quite a few people not liking that too much and saying don't focus on race. You hear this stuff that's being said on this show? Let's continue.
Have the same indignation when Palestinians are killed.
Not when they're killed. Not when they're killed by Palestinians. When you can't make a moral comparison. When Nazi kids were killed in the bombings of Dresden, I didn't have the same comparison when Jewish kids were put in gas chambers and crematoriums.
All right, here we go. Take one, take two, take three, take four. This is my last night on this computer, my last night with this style of stream. So we'll see how it goes with the old computer, but welcome back stream, and then tomorrow, I'm starting out with this guy. So, brand new tomorrow. We'll get that going. And then from there, we'll see how things go. But we're back. We're back doing politics. And we'll start out with a nice warm-up video, see if some people come on later. And then from there, we will be going over the Department of State and their take on Israel, and then doing Israel-Palestine tonight, because that's what we have to do, right? And then International Friday from here on out. And that's the big news. So we will be taking a few takes on that, spending a long, slow night on that, hopefully arguing a little bit. Not really, don't want to argue. And then we will get back in the swing of things with our schedule, the new computer tomorrow. This weekend is going to be a couple-hour stream every night, just trying to get used to the new system. And then next week we will get back into a full-on schedule. Drinking the caffeine because I'm starting early, so I'm guessing this is going to be a long stream to try to get anybody on, since I did promote it, but I haven't been streaming in some 5 months, about 5 months. So let's take our time. Thanks for coming back. If you're watching this secondary, we will be streaming most nights around 11:30. I will have my weekly schedule is what I'm going to try to adhere to. Maybe cut back to 3 nights this year, not doing it so often. But we'll still try to get 3 nights in a week. And this first week or two with the new computer, we'll go 5 nights a week. But we'll cut back to 3, hang out, go over some news a couple nights a week. Welcome back, all. Let's get into it, huh? Let's get to the other screen. And then watch our warm-up video. Let's do mute this.
You like that bone? I got a great price on it.
Did you see my tail when that Chewy box showed up?
Oh, I saw it.
My tail goes bonkers for treats at great prices. Sorry about the vol.
One brief announcement. After Ms. Davis' presentation, the ushers in the audience will collect written questions. You might be thinking of questions that you want to ask. The ushers will distribute pieces of paper immediately after her presentation, and those will be handed down. You should write them out very soon in the beginning of the panel portion of the discussion. They will be handed to Professors Bruce Wright and Boaz Namasaka, and I'll get the results of those questions. Ms. Davis was invited to speak here some time ago by representatives of the Associated Students. Within recent weeks, I was approached with a request that I be moderator for this occasion. The reasoning behind this was that Ms. Davis' academic background was in philosophy and that I chaired the Department of Philosophy on this campus. I therefore have found myself in the last few days in the position of trying to learn enough about Ms. Davis to be able to do an adequate job of introducing her to you and to moderate her discussion with the panelists. It's become plain to me that no matter what facts I present to you, to complete her doctoral program under Professor Herbert Marcuse. She was appointed as a UCLA professor in 1960 to Ms. Davis' speech on the topic of oppression and repression. Thank you.
Before I get started, I want to thank all of you who participated in the vast national and international movement that demanded and secured my freedom. I recognize that had not it been for the efforts of thousands and millions of people throughout the world, I would not be standing here speaking to you this evening. This is the first time I have set foot on a college campus in California since I was fired from UCLA in June of 1970. It's a particular pleasure for me to be here this evening, since shortly after my acquittal, Ronald Reagan made it known that he was going to do everything within his power to bar me, not only from UCLA, but from the entire college and university system here in California. So it gives me a kind of pleasure that people have refused in many ways to be accomplices of the kind of thing that Ronald Reagan is trying to push around. This is also an event which has a particular importance for me, to be able to speak here in California, in Southern California, in Orange County. And I think that this is especially a victory in light of the mudslide re-election of Richard Nixon. Most people call it a landslide victory, but I think it was a mudslide of racism and reaction. The topic of this event is very timely and very appropriate: oppression and repression in the United States. The major problem we are confronting today, the major problem people throughout this country are confronting, is the problem of racism. And I think that if the last 4 years are any indication of what is to come during the next 4 years, we can indeed predict a very catastrophic period within the history of this country. Black and brown and Asian and Native American people have always been the first victims of oppression and repression in this country. But I think that white people in this country, particularly white working people, should begin to understand that they too are exploited and they too can be victims of repression. On many occasions in the past, and especially during this recent period after the elections, I have used the word fascism talked about an increasingly fascist danger which people in this country must begin to come to grips with. Some people have accused me of using rhetoric which doesn't have any basis in reality. But I think that we have to be very serious during these very critical moments. We have to understand that there is indeed a very real danger, menace of fascism in the United States today. Understand that there is indeed a very real danger, menace of fascism in the United States today. I do not think that we have already entered into a period of full-blown fascism, because fascism is not something that suddenly explodes and erupts into being. If we look back into the history of the world, if we look at countries like Germany, Spain, Italy, we see that fascism is a process. It's something that grows and develops. It's like a cancer. It starts attacking one group of people, but like a cancer, it begins to spread out with a fatal rapidity, and eventually, like a cancer, it destroys everything around it. Once fascism does consolidate itself, and I think again we have to look towards the past, look at those countries where fascism did develop into its full-blown state. Once this happens, there is no possibility of resisting it and defeating it from within. Look at what happened to Germany. Look at Italy. It was always defeated from without. And I would ask you to tell me one thing. If you can conceive of such a fascist order developing in this country, who would liberate us? Who would be able to liberate a country whose government possesses enough weaponry and enough nuclear capability to destroy every single person in the world many times over? And I know many of you probably do not agree with me that we are embarking upon a period which could lead in the direction of fascism. But I would urge upon you to weigh what I'm going to say very seriously, because your fate may very well depend upon it. If we look to fascist countries in the past, one of the things that becomes very clear is that the government or the class in power has always sought ways and means to divide the people. And when you talk about divide and rule, divide and conquer, that's one of the age-old strategic themes of oppressors and exploiters. And it's within this context that I want to say a few words about racism. Racism as it affects, in the first place, black people, Chicanos, Puerto Ricans, Native American, Asians. And racism as it also affects those white people who become its unwitting pawns, its unwitting weapons, its unwitting instruments. I don't think that too many people would disagree that there was indeed a lot of racism in Tricky Dick Nixon's campaign. That indeed, I don't think that very many people would disagree that there was some kind of attempt to pit white people against black people. Look at the statement that he made about busing. And look what followed that statement. The events in Canarsie, New York, Brooklyn, where white adults threw stones. We're going to have, right on, sister, and we're going to have a question and answer period as soon as I finish this presentation. Okay, right on. In Canarsie, New York, white adults threw stones at black and Puerto Rican children and threw eggs in their faces, spat on them, and called them all kinds of vicious, racist names. And I think we have to understand the connection between that statement that Nixon had made only a short while previous to that and what happened in Canarsie. And I think we have to understand the connection between the kinds of things that Richard Nixon has been saying and what happened yesterday at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You see, it is no accident that precisely at this moment we appear to be returning back to Little Rock, Arkansas. We are returning back to Orangeburg, because Orangeburg preceded Kent. You know, black students had been killed already in a protest situation before these students at Kent State were killed. But because of the racism that is so deeply embedded in this country, the reaction came only when white students were killed. But let's try to understand, first of all, what racism is all about. Let's try to understand its source and who it benefits. Because I maintain that racism does not benefit the masses of white people, and that white people have just as much an interest in fighting racism as black people and Chicanos and Puerto Ricans and Native Americans and Asians and... First of all, let's ask ourselves, who does racism aid? And I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that the beneficiaries of racism are not the masses of white people, but the vast capitalist corporations in the country. And you see, when I talk about capitalists, I'm not talking about the small businessman, the person who has a corner drugstore or a corner grocery store. See, that's what Richard Nixon wants us to think black capitalism is all about. But you see, capitalism today, when we talk about capitalism today, we have to look towards the General Motors, the Standard Oils, the IT&Ts, the General Electrics, the Bank of Americas, and I could go on and on. But actually, I couldn't go that far, because the number of people in this country who control the majority of the wealth is extremely minute. If you take the 100 largest corporations in this country, they already control 50% of the wealth. And then you take the 200 largest, you find out that they control practically all except 15% of the wealth in this country. But then 70% of all income taxes are paid by working people. Does that sound right? Sounds like there's something wrong with that. But let me try to explain for a moment how racism affects people of color, and black people, Chicanos, Puerto Ricans, and all people of color in this country. If you take working people of color, and if you compare the wages which we receive to the wages which white workers doing the very same jobs, and I'm using government statistics that the government has given us, you find that there is a $28 million differential. That is to say, black people alone account for a $21 billion super profits. And so I'm talking about the profits that the capitalists get over and above what they would get if there were same jobs. But then if you add Chicanos and Native Americans and Puerto Ricans and all other people of color in this country, you end up with $28 million in extra profits that the capitalists put in their pockets just because of the existence of racism. Just because of the existence of racism. And that's a lot of money, because we could buy a lot of houses and build a lot of schools and a lot of child care centers and a lot of the things that we need in the ghetto and the barrio with that $28 million. But you see, racism serves yet another function, and that is the disruptive, divisive function. Because you have a situation where, while white workers can rant and rave about black workers, that makes them forget that the exploiter is also on their backs too. And what it does is it destroys the possibility of creating a movement that's going to be able to overturn the exploiter. And that's the divide and rule function. if we look again towards the past, back into the past, if we look at Nazi Germany, we can see that the function of racism can be very similar to the function of anti-Semitism in promoting and encouraging fascism and allowing fascism to develop to its full-blown state. Because you see, while the masses of Germans were being anti-Semitic, the German capitalists were squeezing more sweat and blood out of them. And if white people don't watch out in this country, that is exactly what is going to happen. Because there's already been the wage freeze. And there's already been this massive unemployment. And there's already been the assault on workers' right to strike. And we have to try to put all of these things together to see where we're going. But let's try to look at what is happening in this country today. Let's try to talk about some of the real indications of a developing fascism. We already mentioned what happened in Canarsie. We already mentioned what happened in Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana yesterday. But let's try to put some of this into context. And let's talk about what Nixon consciously did in modeling his election campaign. His election campaign was modeled along the most blatantly racist issues that we have seen in recent years. And you see, a lot of people wondered why George Wallace didn't run this year. He probably would have gotten far more sympathy in his present state than 4 years ago. But I think that there is no doubt about the fact that Richard Nixon demonstrated that he is not only George Wallace's bedfellow, but that in a lot of ways he knows how to out-Wallace Wallace. Because you see, in a lot of ways, the Nixon is a little bit more clever, a little bit shrewder than George Wallace, so he can get much further. But there is something else which points to what I would call a racist conspiracy from the very, very high ranks of the ruling powers of this country. And what is that? I know a lot of us kept waiting for George McGovern to say something about the need to respond to what was happening in the ghettos and the barrios. And we kept waiting. And we heard Nixon and all of his racist nonsense.
That was pretty good stuff. It's a good intro, in my opinion.
Day one. Did Joe Biden sign off on these exact words when the statement went out?
So I'm not going to speak to internal deliberations inside the government, but I can tell you we have confidence in what we said about this situation. Now, I'm just the same way I cut out. Hold on, just this. I will, if there's.
Aw. Where did we go to? I think we went too far too fast. Where did we go to? All right. That's where we want to be. But not where we want to go yet. Okay, so gotta make this clip worthy. Let's do the thing so I can clip it easy. Nice easy clip on this. Boom, 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 boom. All right, DOS, Israel, International News. Here we go, my YouTube clipping moments. And then, yeah, we'll get on with the night. But here comes the DOS. This is last week's DOS, kind of a warm-up to seeing what actually occurred, what we actually led up to the moment. And then we will show Monday morning's reactionary response, and then finish the DOS with Max Blumenthal's attack of questions, which was awesome. and then we'll watch some clips and videos of international independent journalist experts. I don't know, some good clips, whatever. And that's what we're doing tonight. So to start, I'm gonna do this scene back to my little corner, how I like it, just back in my corner. And DOS, all right, Mr. Miller. I think I have these all set up, so it should just be the second I want, the second I want, the second I want. And then we can move on. Not guaranteeing that right now. Again, this is my last day with my old garbage computer. Tomorrow's a new day, new stream. Super excited. A, I'm back. B, new computer for tomorrow. So all good things coming. All right, let's do the DOS. Week of Israel. All right, this one's from 10-2. All right, 10-2, October 2nd. I'm pretty damn sure I got this all set up right here. I do.
I'll come back in the same way I cut Alex off. There's a lot of people with a lot of topics. I'm going to move to Saeed. Saeed, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll come back if there's time. We're going to go to Saeed. I want to make sure we have a chance to get everybody in the room. It's always a little busier on Monday. We haven't had a briefing for a few days. I know. Saeed, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. You began by noting how Ukraine has inspired the world in fighting against an illegal military occupation. And I wonder if you think that the Palestinians ought to be so inspired as to fight an illegal occupation with the same kind of intensity and the same commitment, and also count on a relentless commitment of support by the United States and the rest of the world, as you stated.
We are firmly committed to a two-state solution, as we have spoken to a number of times, Saeed.
Right, but you said that Ukraine is inspiring the world, and the Palestinians have a right to be, as members of this world community, to be so inspired and fight occupation.
We certainly take steps that would improve the dignity, the economic situation of the Palestinian people, as well as an ultimate two-state solution.
Okay, one other question. Yesterday, the Israeli occupation forces forced.
All right, this is an intense story, just as a warning for everybody. Week of Heart. This is a news show. This is a politics show. You should not be coming into this thinking this is going to be soft, but this is a little intense.
Palestinian family to destroy her own home in East Jerusalem with her children and move out. Do you have any comment on that?
It is critical, as we've said on a number of occasions, for Israel and the Palestinian Authority to refrain from unilateral steps that exacerbate tensions and undercut efforts to advance a negotiated two-state solution, and that certainly includes the practices of forced demolitions and evictions of families from homes in which they've lived for generations.
Thank you.
Again, this is a red statement. They knew that something was going to get asked about this because that weekend, the weekend before the missiles, that weekend we had Israel going in and burning houses and evicting people. Literally the weekend before, just last weekend. Almost 2 weeks ago now, but yeah. So this is that Monday, after October 1st, after people had burned their houses. That's all they get on the questions.
Just on the situation in Turkey and northern Iraq, do you have any reaction to what happened in Ankara and then the subsequent strikes?
So the United States strongly condemns the October 1st terrorist attack at the Turkish Interior Ministry in Ankara. You saw the Secretary speak to this yesterday. We wish those injured a speedy and full recovery. And we stand firmly with our NATO ally Turkey and the Turkish people in the fight against the PKK, which has been designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the United States. We condemn any acts of terrorism against Turkey and its people.
Follow up on that question. Yeah. And the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he said that we are extending our military operations in Syria and also in Iraq. And this is at the time that the Iraqi government is rejecting all the violations into their sovereignty. They said that this is not a sign of the good neighbor. What's your position and comment on that?
So we recognize the legitimate security threat the PKK poses to Turkey, and we urge Turkey to pursue joint counterterrorism cooperation with Iraq in a way that supports and respects Iraqi sovereignty. I'll come to you after we finish. Let's do the left. And then
Thank you, Roger. About 4 years ago, the United States administration reached an understanding with.
So this is just more terrorist area, more reason for the U.S. military to be in the region, right? Like this is all just leading up to more military in this region. But I thought that was the biggest like signal. Like literally the weekend before, Israel is burning houses and evicting people from a region, and the next weekend Hamas shoots some missiles. That's more than just coincidence, right?
investigation, and as we've said, we know that the attack was well coordinated and planned, and everyone who was involved in planning and carrying out this attack must be brought to justice. Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, on the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, the White House announced on the weekend that there is a basic framework for the normalization. Can you elaborate on that?
I'm not going to get ahead of this process, Michelle, so what I will just leave it at is that many of the key elements of a pathway towards normalization are now on the table, and there is broad understanding of those elements, which we're certainly not going to get into the specifics of these diplomatic engagements publicly. What I will also say is that this requires, the specifics require an incredible amount of legwork, diplomacy, discipline, rigor, and all of the stakeholders being deeply engaged in this. I will note, though, we don't have a formal framework, and we don't have the terms ready to be signed. There's still lots of work to do, and we're continuing to work that process. We believe, though, as part of our efforts to advance a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous and stable Middle East region, that continuing our support for full normalization with Israel and continue to talk to our regional partners about how more progress can be made, and that's what we're going to continue to stay focused on. Well, yeah.
Sorry, wait. You just said it requires an incredible amount of diplomacy, discipline, and rigor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is there another word in there that I missed?
No, I think that's.
Is this a new phrase?
No. It's just how we are describing.
Okay, who came up with that one? I'm curious.
I'm going to move on. Thank you, Matt.
Can I follow up?
Sure. I'll come to the side, then I'll come back to this side of the room. Go ahead.
Very issue. Although Matt's question is really very important. Rigor, does that mean ongoing, non-stopping kind of an effort? The full steam ahead. Is that what it means?
The point that I'm making, Saeed, is that this is an incredibly mounting task in front of us. One that we think, as the Secretary has said recently, could be transformative for the region. One that we, of course, are continuing to be deeply engaged on and work towards as well. I just don't want to get ahead of that process.
Okay, so on this very point, both the former ambassador to Israel, Martin Indyk, and the former Jordanian ambassador to the UN, Raed Zaid Al Hussein, wrote an article, lengthy article in Foreign Affairs, says what a Saudi-Israeli deal could mean for the Palestinians, and they're warning you, saying that the real aim of the judicial reform and so on is it's a ploy that they want to basically form, have an Israeli state from the river to the sea. That is the aim of the right wing. That's what they're saying, the right wing government of Israel currently, and they're suggesting to you that whatever you want.
So this is again last week. This one is from October 3rd, 10 days ago. These are things that all happened before the Hamas attack. And we are talking about a buildup. We are talking about this did not occur overnight. These are things that we are discussing at the DOS. These are things that are getting discussed in America by American journalists discussing this with the Department of State, the DOS. It's insane.
On the Palestinian issue, they list the three components, which is the whatever defense pact and the nuclear issue and so on. But on the Palestinian issue, that you must extract that before you go ahead with any kind of normalization effort. Do you have any comment on this? Do you feel that something must be sort of gotten from the Israelis, cast in concrete before moving ahead with any normalization?
Said, a normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia will and should include a serious component dealing with the fundamental issues between Israelis and Palestinians. But as I said in answering Michelle's question, I don't want to get ahead of the process or what that might look like. This is an effort that is ongoing. Again, as the Secretary said, we believe that reaching a normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia could be transformative for the region. But much work continues to lie ahead. Work, as Matt says, or points out that we said, will require discipline and rigor and continued engagement of diplomacy. And so I will let that process play out.
Can I just make a suggestion?
Sure.
I probably shouldn't do this, but if you're going to come up with a phrase like that, say diplomacy, discipline, and rigor, maybe you should try for the alliterative diplomacy, discipline, and determination, right?
Thank you. I will take it. I don't think anybody was trying
to your people who
I don't think anybody's trying to come up with a new phrase. We're just talking about the important work that we have ahead.
The 3 Ds.
Go ahead, Saeed.
So just to follow up, I mean, going back to the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, it really is a normalization plan, but it is predicated on the creation of Palestinian states. So what is the difference between this, step-by-step kind of normalization and that one that was really grandiose? It was, for all the Arab and Muslim countries to recognize Israel, have wonderful relations and so on the premise that there is a Palestinian state at the end. And that's what you keep saying. You keep saying that you are committed to the two-state solution. So what is the difference?
Saeed, we are committed to a two-state solution. We've been very clear about that. But on the subject of this, I don't know if there are how many different ways I can say it, so I will just be very blunt. There's still lots of work to do ahead, and we're working through it, and we'll have more to share.
This is not blunt, by the way. This is this is an abstained answer. This is not blunt, you jackass. Blunt is an answer. This is abstaining from an answer.
And talk about as this progress on this proceeds.
Can I follow up on this too?
Let me
What from Sunday when Kirby said that there is a framework, basic framework to today.
You'll have to speak with the White House on what they were referring to. What I will just say again is that this is a process that is in front of us. We're continuing to work through that. We don't have a formal framework, but the key elements of a pathway, of course, have been on the table, and that's something that we're continuing to work towards. Gita, go ahead.
Thank you. Ali Khamenei, the leader of the Islamic Republic in Iran, doesn't seem to agree with the Biden administration's view of expanding the Abraham Accords. He actually has said that the Arab countries are gambling those who want to sign on, and that they're, quote, betting on a losing horse. Any comments?
No, not really. What I will just say is that, I'm not sure that.
Oh, that's all I want to go with that. No, not really. And then he goes on for 2 minutes. No, not really. And then he goes on and gives a non-answer for 2 minutes. That's fucking funny, though. No, not really. Oh, he says that expanding the Abraham Accord was a losing horse. And do you have anything to respond? No, not really. And he literally goes on for like 2 minutes with a bullshit answer after this. It's hilarious. All right. As I said, this is all build up. We are just leading up into the weekend. So, October 4th.
I realize it's not Iran sending weapons to Ukraine, such like they have sent weapons to Russia for use in Ukraine, but it's still Iranian weaponry leaving their country and going to a third one, and so that's not a. I mean, I'm just wondering if it came up.
Correct. That's
so
our
it's not a
understanding.
violation of the bond.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Alex, go ahead. Jenny, then I'll come to you after.
Is this, and it is state that announces the PDA, so I understand that, we can ask DOD, but a lot of this does have to do with state. Do you expect these seizures and these transfers then to Ukraine to be part of an ongoing strategy, a larger strategy at a time when obviously the Ukrainians have low levels of all kinds of ammunition and there are huge questions about American funding? Is this something that we're going to see more of going forward?
Well, first, broadly, this, as you know, this is not the first time that we have seized Iranian security systems or assets historically. But I don't want to just speculate or offer an analysis on.
You agree that Israel should allow foreign diplomats, including American diplomats, to go into
reason why this meeting had been taking place.
All right, so I guess this one didn't sit at the spot I wanted to. Hello, what's up? What's up? Welcome in, first timer. Welcome in. For me, it's welcome back. First time streaming in like 5 months, so welcome into your first night in. Well, for me, welcome back. I'm on a little early than usually. I start about 11:30 usually on Friday nights, but usually more of a late night political streamer. But I'm pretty sure this is where I wanted to talk to Mr. Patel at.
A little bit, give it the heart out. Saeed, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. Very quickly, the Israeli authorities, the Israeli military authorities, prevented British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly from visiting the Palestinian village of Ain Samia. I wonder if you're aware of that, if you have any comment on that. They also prevented other European diplomats. This village had recently been basically empty.
Let me say a couple things, Saeed. As a general matter, we acknowledge that Israel makes determinations relating to its security, and our understanding, our limited understanding of this, is that this was a decision made it was a security decision made in coordination with relative security partners. So the government of Israel and, of course, our partners in the United Kingdom can speak more specifically about the Foreign Secretary's travels and anything about his trip. But what I will just say is that the U.S. remains committed to engaging Israeli leadership on this issue, on the issues of settler violence, and we continue to have robust engagement, including engagement on the ground to visit and engage with these affected communities.
But you agree that Israel should allow foreign diplomats, including American diplomats, to go into villages and places in the West Bank that where crimes or
where crimes against Palestinians have been committed. This is, again, 10-4. I believe the Hamas attacks occurred on 10-8 or 10-9, and all of this is unveiled. So if you think of things of unprovoked, these are questions happening in the USD Department of State, the DOS. These are questions that are getting asked in America by journalists. So if you don't think a buildup is occurring, oh, that's crazy to me. No provocation. So this is all based around. This question is all based around some British intelligence agents trying to go in and do a investigation about a possible massacre in a Palestinian village, and they did not let them in there. They would not let them, any cameras, any documentation, and a country that's not allowing proper journalism, proper investigations into possible war crimes. It's insane.
A decision made rooted in security, and so I will just leave it at that.
Just two quick on the Palestinian issue. Israel, every time there is a holiday, Israel closes all Palestinian neighborhoods and so on. I mean, couldn't they just celebrate whatever rituals they can without basically imprisoning the Palestinians' home and making life very difficult? Life is already difficult, making it far more difficult during the holiday. Do you have any comment on that?
Saeed, as a general matter, we believe that authorities should respect peaceful prayer and assembly. I'm certainly not going to stand up here and tell any community how they should observe.
Also, did not know about these facts, that they blockade resources and cut off power even more during the holidays, which is why Hamas attacks during their holidays. Hamas chooses these attacked holidays because they are completely, they're shut off of power, shut off of water, shut off of everything. So that is why they choose these days to attack. I did not know that until literally, again, this is the DOS happening days before the attack.
Any religious holiday, that would be improper for me to do so. DR, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The US-backed forces, Syrian-backed forces, they denied their involvement in the recent attack in Turkey, and SDF commander Maslow Abdi in a tweet says that Turkey is looking for pretext to legitimize its ongoing.
Oh shit. Back to the Turkey attacks. We don't need to go over that tonight. So, now, this is the Department of State after the attack. And watch any provocation, any questions, any leading into Israel has any negative, any guilt in this, just sets him off and explodes, right? You cannot question their, you can't question Israel. If you question Israel, you're the enemy. I think you should question anything about governments. Governments should be questioned. That is like rule number one to me. Your government is usually lying.
Good afternoon, everyone. Start with some brief comments. I would like to begin by reiterating our condolences to the families of those who were killed by Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel, including the 14 American citizens who we know have died. The department is actively engaging with the families of those U.S. citizens. None of us can imagine the grief that they are feeling today, and we are doing everything we can in our power to offer them all appropriate consular assistance. I also want to talk about Secretary Blinken's efforts over the past 4 days since Hamas launched its initial terrorist attacks against Israel, which have been focused on 3 key priorities. First and foremost, the Secretary has been engaged with our Israeli partners to ensure that Israel has everything that it needs to defend itself. Both President Biden and Secretary Blinken have made clear that we stand ready to offer all appropriate means of support to the government and people of Israel. The first tranche of security assistance is on its way and will arrive in the coming days, and more will follow. Second, the Secretary has been working the phones with his foreign counterparts to ensure that anyone who has lines of communication with parties hostile to Israel should use those channels to say that now is not the time to take advantage of this situation. The President has made that point clearly and forcefully, and is one that Secretary Blinken has reiterated in his calls with leaders in the region. Third, the Secretary has been intensely focused on securing the release of all hostages held in Gaza. There are a number of countries who have the ability to deliver messages to Hamas, and we have made clear to those countries that they should urge Hamas to release all hostages immediately. This is a matter we take incredibly seriously. Finally, I'd like to announce that Secretary Blinken will be traveling to Israel in the coming days to engage our Israeli partners directly about the situation on the ground and how we can continue to best support them in their fight against the terrorists who launched these horrific attacks. Our support for Israel is unwavering, and the Secretary looks forward to meeting with senior leaders in the Israeli government and continuing the discussions he and the President have been having with them since the initial attacks on Saturday. And with that, Matt.
In the coming days, you want to be more specific?
Our expectation is that we will leave tomorrow and arrive in Israel on Thursday.
Okay, and is he going to go anywhere else?
I don't have announcements to make. This is a trip we're still putting together at the time, but we'll may have further announcements on that later this afternoon.
All right, and then on, so Jake Sullivan at the White House just said there are roughly 20 Americans missing.
That's correct. There are, the last number I had before coming out here was that there are 20 Americans who remain unaccounted for. That's a number that has been moving around over the last few days. You have one number, and then some of the people who are unaccounted for, unfortunately, you discover are actually deceased, or then some may turn up, but right now the number that we're tracking is 20.
And you have no idea of those 20, how many of their how many of them do their families believe that they are actually being held?
We don't have definitive information, but we do believe it's likely that there may be hostages who are U.S. citizens who are held in Gaza.
Go
ahead. We'll start.
I'll just be brief, but can you just explain a little bit more what the Secretary's message will be? You said he wants to confer with people, but will it be a message of solidarity? Will he discuss in depth the conflict and the maneuvers the actions that Israel is taking now?
It will be a message of solidarity and support. He, of course, wants to hear from the leaders of Israel, hear from them directly about the situation they're facing, hear from them directly about what they need and how we can best support them, and then to send a message to the government of Israel and the people of Israel that we are there to support them as they fight against these brutal terrorist attacks, and to talk about what additional assistance we can provide them.
Just on the hostages, can you talk a little bit about what engagements the State Department has had trying to secure their release with Israeli partners and others?
I'm not going to talk in more detail other than what I said in my opening comments. Secretary has had a round of calls over the weekend. You've probably seen those as we've been reading those calls out, and he has delivered a message consistently with everyone in the region. If there's anything you can do to send a message to those who are holding hostages, whether they be American citizens or whether they be others, that you should send the message to Hamas that they need to release those hostages immediately.
And what is the U.S. telling the Israelis about a ground operation given the...
So they do that constantly where they fade the volume in and out of this one. I'm not sure if they did that in post just to make sure that kind of messed up things. I feel like they do that to kind of detract from the video, especially when it's a kind of intense one. This one had a lot of altercation. There was a lot of questions that were softballs, but there's a lot of questions that kind of made him mad and got him aggravated. And then Max happens at like minute 23. This is kind of a softball chick, so we can talk through her.
Are they being productive? Is Hamas even acknowledging that they're holding Americans right now?
I'm not going to speak to the details of those conversations. We do believe that there are partners in the region who are playing a productive role here and want to help secure the release of hostages. But in terms of details of those efforts, I'm not going to talk about them publicly.
And who from the U.S. is leading those efforts?
Again, I think there are a number of people inside the U.S. government. Well, I'll say two things. One, the Secretary has been engaged in direct conversations with his counterparts. The U.S. government is also making available to Israel experts in hostage negotiations and hostage recovery. That includes experts from the State Department. I'm not going to talk about those in detail. Those are private conversations we're having with the Israeli government. There are a number of experts from across the government who we are going to make available. Olivia.
Thank you, Matt. There's public reporting that the talks via the Qataris involve a possible swap of women and children being held in Hamas for women and children being held in Israeli jails. Can you comment on all whether the contours of those kinds of negotiations are accurate?
Again, I'm not going to talk about the details of any conversations other than to say that we have made clear that Hamas ought to release all of those prisoners immediately. That is our position. That is what we have advocated for. That's what we think Hamas should do.
Separately, are there Americans who are asking the State Department for assistance to leave?
Again, some of these questions are kind of softball. A few people ruffle the feathers. I'm not going to say everybody. There's a lot of people in here that are corporate news, so they don't ruffle too many feathers, and they get these nice, calm answers. And we're just checking on American citizens. But this actually is a pretty good press briefing. This one, they ruffled his feathers a few times, and then, like I said, we'll finish with Max, who I feel is like 23, 26, somewhere in here. Or maybe it was 32. Maybe it was 32, 30. Yeah, 32. That's where we piss them off. That was that good stuff. All right.
Secretary have said that there's no direct evidence linking Iran to the...
Yeah, so we'll go to that 32-minute mark where Max really ruffles them up. But there's a few people, I don't know who she works for. I should look these things up before I attack people like that. But she had some softball-esque questions, so we're not going to worry about her too much. I probably should definitely learn these, learn where these people work. I really don't have any concept of any of their actual, a lot of them are international, which is why they get better questions on this, the Department of State than they do in the press briefings for the White House. The Department of State press briefings actually get some questions. Yeah, but not all of them are good questions. I kind of wanted to watch all of this except for freaking, man, when you let somebody have like 5 follow-ups, they're definitely a corporate news wing, because they get a lot of questions. All right, here we go.
Back to Iran, looking at how, if the regime had direct knowledge of an attack, the timing of it, how much does that matter to the administration, given what you know, the material support, the military support, the millions of dollars we've been funneling into this organization, Hamas?
So I will say that first of all, I wouldn't want to get ahead of what this assessment may ultimately find. We are in the early days after these attacks. Our first focus has been on helping Israel respond to these attacks, but we will continue to examine all intelligence and collect new intelligence, collect new information, talk with our Israeli partners about anything that they find. But I will say, as we have made clear, that Iran has long supported Hamas. Hamas would not be what it is today without the financial and material backing that they have gotten from Iran. So yes, we very much do believe that Iran is at least complicit in these attacks, even if we do not yet have any evidence to show that they directed or orchestrated them.
Will that complicity, will there be any kind of response? I know you don't want to get into specifics, but...
So I wouldn't want to preview any actions that we might take. We have taken a number of actions since the beginning of this administration to hold Iran accountable for its malign activities in the region, including its support for terrorism. That includes more than 400 sanctions that we have imposed on Iran. We will continue to take actions to hold Iran accountable, but I wouldn't want to preview from here what those might look like.
Okay, so you're telling me in the most surveilled peninsula on the planet, possibly in the universe, because who else goes to war like we do? The most surveilled peninsula on the planet, the most surveilled country, Iran, somehow gave weapons to a basic prison state, and then we didn't know about it until after they shot the weapons off. Oh man. And I've heard reporting. We'll get some more stuff later, but I've heard reporting that those weapons came from Ukraine. But then they're going to ask if they came from North Korea, or maybe they came from Russia, or Iran. And really, like, the fact that the weapons got into a basic prison state, open-air prison state, how'd the weapons get in there without our intelligence seeing them is a interesting question, because everything is inspected that goes in and out of there. I've been calling red flags since the beginning of this. I'm saying this is a red flag. It probably isn't, but it's the kind of thing the Americas like to do. Have a red flag so you can create a war. We can start a war with Iran via proxy Israel with a red flag like this. And it's scary. Like, it's scaring me that we're going to try to go to war no matter what it takes. And if Ukraine doesn't work, then maybe the U.S. will get behind this. I feel like it might be a red flag. I don't know. I'm scared. We're trying to go to war so bad right now. We just want a world war so badly.
Follow up on that. Go ahead, and then I'll come to Abby.
There's been some talk, especially among Republicans, about refreezing the $6 billion in funds that had been transferred to Qatar to secure the release of the Americans. Is that under consideration?
So I think you're talking about the funds that come from Iranian oil revenue that I've heard people say could be used to fund malign activities. I want to give a very clear response, so if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to read something here. Iran will have zero oil revenue to spend on any of these things. Let me say that again, zero. 100% of the revenue that Iran receives from the sale of crude oil will be held in foreign accounts and can be used by Iran only for humanitarian trade or bilateral trade in non-sanctioned goods and services. And I will point out that is not a quote from anyone in this administration. That is a quote from former Secretary Mike Pompeo, delivered at the State Department on November 2nd, 2018, when he established the accounts that yielded this revenue that Iran is now has access to, with additional restrictions that we have imposed on them to ensure that not only that they can only be used for humanitarian trade, not bilateral trade and non-sanctioned goods, only humanitarian purposes, and we have ongoing mechanisms. Now, with respect to what we might do in the future, we have the ability to freeze those funds if we need to. We've not made any decisions.
Matt, that's fine, but it doesn't matter who said it. Whoever said it was wrong, because the money, if Iran has a promise of money, they can use their own money that they have inside their own country, knowing to do whatever with it. They could buy medicine, they could buy food, whatever, they could rebuild a bridge, they could do that. But they know that they have $6 billion sitting in Qatar right now. Okay? So whether Secretary Pompeo said it and said that the money would only be used for that purpose, yeah, or whether you guys are saying, yes, maybe that specific dollar with that serial the serial number, or that euro with that serial number on it, can't be used to fund terrorism. But the fact of the matter is, and you guys know this, is that it frees up money that Iran has already inside its own country to use for other things, so they don't have to spend that money on non-sanctioned items.
Let me say two things about that. One, the reason I read this exact quote is I have heard a fair bit of criticism about this money, including from the person who said this in November of 2018. And I thought it's fair to point out that this money was first allowed to accrue into these accounts under the Trump administration, and that's a point you did then as well. You did, and there are a number of people who have had a lot to say about this the last few days who have conveniently forgot that fact, which is why I thought it was important to remind the world. The second thing I will say is that Iran has.
Very important to point the finger. Thank you so much. Extremely important to point the finger at somebody else. If you hadn't done that, I mean, we might be, what the fuck was the point of that? That doesn't do anything for the conversation. It doesn't lead the conversation in any good direction. What was the point of that, you jackass?
Has, of course, always funded terrorism. They have always funded malign activities in the region, and that's why we have always taken action to hold them account. But this money can only be used for humanitarian purposes. Not a cent of it has been spent at this point, and we have the ability to freeze it at any time.
That is not the criticism that you're getting. The criticism you're getting is that this frees up money inside Iran that they can use for malign purposes, as you said.
And there is just no evidence that is accurate. When we have seen the evidence.
You say that there's no evidence that Iran has used money over the course of the last month or month and a half since the money arrived in Qatar to send to Hamas. Can you say
Iran
that?
has funded terrorism before these accounts were established during the Trump administration. They have funded terrorism after these accounts were established in the Trump administration. They will no doubt continue to fund terrorism in the future, which is why we have sought to hold them accountable. With respect to this money, it cannot be used for anything but humanitarian purposes. We have strict oversight, we have strict visibility, and if we see it being used for anything else, we can shut it down immediately. Saeed, go ahead.
Let me just.
You know what? We're going to move around. Saeed, go ahead.
Although the president did not call for restraint for the Israelis to exercise restraint in the upcoming, or the speculated to be upcoming ground invasion, the president did mention that Israel ought to abide by international law. Does that, in your view, mean that Israel must end its cutoff of water, electricity, food, and medicine to the people in Gaza?
I will say that, as the president made clear, Israel has suffered from a brutal terrorist attack. Israel has the right to defend itself. It has the right to take action against the terrorists who launched this brutal attack and killed Israeli civilians. It killed American civilians, killed mothers and children and babies and kidnapped children. And so...
Okay, when anybody goes off a fucking tangent like this, you know they're full of shit, right? Like, when they get mad, like when somebody like this who is calloused and just writes off like deaths like constantly gets mad... I came from a country in constantly war, so there is no thing that I hate more than war. This is why I hate to know about another, so why the world is becoming every time more. If Israel attacked is Defense Act, but it's Palestine, it's terrorism. Yeah, that's the thing that's getting a little frustrating, is if one side attacks, it's defense, the other side attacks, it's terrorism. Is definitely the thing. It's just we're ramping up another war. Like, why are war profiteers more important than human lives? Why are profits for GDPs more important than human civility and peace and prosperity? Like, oh my goodness, we are better than this. Human beings could be so much better than this.
They are going to take action to respond to this terrorist attack and take action to secure their country, and we support them. As the president made clear, we always encourage all of our allies and partners to act in strict accordance with international law. That is what democracies do, and I would just point out that, of course, is not what Hamas did. Let me just finish. That is not what Hamas did in coming into Israel and kidnapping and murdering innocent civilians.
Okay, I understand. I mean, Hamas, you have Hamas listed as a terrorist organization.
Okay, so he's getting heated because he's trying to attack something that he knows is not exactly pure. It's not unprovoked, but he's trying to make it. He's got to lie for this, and he's got to push his propaganda. And he wants no pushback at all. You can see he gets more and more frustrated of any pushback. But Saeed is getting mad because he is of Middle Eastern descent, and he has some sort of I don't know, basic dignity towards the Palestinian people. Like, we shouldn't want anybody slaughtered. We should not want slaughters to happen anywhere, right? I am not for death and destruction anywhere on the planet. I'm sick of war. We are better than this.
Don't get $4 billion a year from you. They don't have military aid and support and so on. So that is established. You're saying that Israel is a democracy. It's a country that abides by international law. I'm asking you, the cutoff of water, electricity, food, and medicine is considered a war crime. Do you call on Israel to cease its effort now in cutting off medicine,
Let
water,
me start by saying that we are
aid?
in the early days of Israel's response. Israel has a right to conduct an aggressive response, to respond to the terrorism that's been committed against its citizens. We expect them to follow international law. We believe that they will, and we will remain in close contact with them about it.
You believe they should not intentionally target civilians? That's one. Second, do you have any idea on the number of Palestinians killed by Israel in the last 4 days?
I have seen public reports.
What are these?
I am not going to speak to Saeed, I'm going to speak to what the U.S. government can verify, which I've done with the number of U.S. citizens. I will let Israel speak to the number of Israeli citizens that have killed, as well as the number of Palestinians that have killed.
The 14 that the president spoke about are Palestinian Americans?
I don't have any degree whether they are Palestinian Americans, whether they're dual citizens. It ultimately doesn't matter to us. American citizens are American citizens.
My last question to you, Matt. I mean, the president said that Hamas is motivated, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, motivated solely by the quest to kill Jews. Do you believe that is to be the case? Is it the assessment of this government that Hamas' sole motivation is to go out and kill Jews? There's no context. There's no siege that has gone on for 16 years. There's no raid after raid by the Israelis.
Saeed, I am just going to say that is a bit of a surprising question after what we saw Hamas carry out this weekend. When we saw
Surprising question? Dude, Saeed asks questions every week about dignity towards Palestinians, about slaughter of Palestinians, about Palestinians' homes being burnt down, killed, raped, tortured, about journalists being shot, about civilians being shot, about schools being bombed, about hospitals being bombed. These are things that have happened week in and week out. He's always asking you. And then when this happens, you're going to say that you're completely surprised? How are you completely surprised? These are questions that happen every week. We've been witnessing this every week.
Hamas go in and deliberately target Israeli citizens, and not just soldiers in the IDF, but women, children, kidnap them. We all saw the images that across our television screens of Hamas behaving in the most inhumane way possible. So I won't speak to their motivations, but I think they're pretty clear. Let me move on. Go ahead.
Is there another context?
Thank you very much, Matt. I have a question about the U.S. role, potential U.S. role. There's been this strike carrier group that has been dispatched to the area, to the eastern Mediterranean, and now there's reports that the second carrier group might be on the way to near Israel. So today, the Turkish president asked what the U.S. warships sent near Israel are there for, and it's a question a number of countries in the region are trying to find an answer for. So is the U.S. really looking to get involved militarily? Can you rule that out? Because that could mean a catastrophic all-around regional conflict immediately.
So we do not have any plans for boots on the ground or military action at this point. I will let the Pentagon speak to the specifics of deployments, but as the president has made clear, he has ordered the Pentagon to take these efforts to send a clear deterrent message to anyone who is considering entering this conflict, any entity or who is hostile to Israel, to take note and to not take action. I thought the president spoke very forcefully to that question today. Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. On connection between Hamas and North Korea, Hamas and North Korea have been engaging in arms trading for some time. What are you concerned about the North Korea's announcement to that it supports Hamas?
Well, we clearly would be concerned about any country that is providing support to Hamas, whether it be financial, whether it be military, and would look to counter that action. And we do it first and foremost by making sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against the recent terrorist attacks.
Does Israel have a right to kill civilians?
Go ahead.
Does Israel have a right to kill
Now, I'm going to call on the way we do it in this briefing room. And you and I've had this conversation before. Is I call on people and they ask questions and I move around. Go ahead.
Yesterday, Secretary.
Yeah, and he's going to avoid that guy because that guy wants to add a confrontational question into the mix. He's going to avoid confrontation this day because he's already riled and pissed off, you can see. Because, yeah, it's got to be rough to lie for the propaganda machine. I don't have any sympathy towards this man. He is straight up spouting propaganda. He is not throwing any any balance into his ideals, right? Like, look at the world with some balance. You can't say that killing on one side is not provoked. Now, you can't say, I will never say that killing on either side is justified or good by any means. I'm just saying that you can't say that it's unprovoked when things happen all the time. You can't say they're unprovoked and just say that straight face jackass. Come on, man. Time is fluid. Things happen. We shouldn't hold grudges the way we do. Countries shouldn't hold grudges the way we do. Whole populaces shouldn't hold hatred the way they do. But they do. And that is what's happening. It's gross and horrible.
Deleted a tweet related to his phone call with Turkish foreign minister. The tweet included the mention of the ceasefire. Was that the reason, the word ceasefire was the reason behind why he deleted the tweet?
I'm glad you asked me that question because there's been a bit of misinformation about it. So after his call with Foreign Minister Fadon, we released a public readout that made clear that the Secretary, in his conversation, had reiterated what we have said publicly a number of times, which is Hamas should cease its violent activities against Israel. The tweet was unfortunately worded, did not capture that appropriately, so we pulled it down. And I've seen a lot of public conversation about this. I think I think you would have to be intentionally misunderstanding what our position is, given the number of statements that we have made about supporting Israel's right to defend itself, about supporting Israel taking direct action against Hamas. So I won't speak to any potential mediation. I will say, with respect to the conversation that the Secretary had, we released a readout with information about his conversation with Foreign Minister Fadon. We made clear in that conversation, as we have in all of our conversations, that anything they can do to keep other parties from entering this conflict, anything that they can do to secure the release of hostages is something we would encourage and something we would support. Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. I have two questions, one on Hamas and the other one on Syria. The first one, have you noticed the statements that issued by the Iraqi leaders and Iraqi governmental officials about events and escalation in Gaza and also in Israel, including Hadi al-Amiri, the leader of the Iranian-backed Badr organization, issued a threat to the U.S. forces in Iraq and also elsewhere. He said that if the U.S. will interfere into the Israel and also helping Israel against Hamas, we are not hesitating to target the U.S. forces.
So I won't speak to those comments specifically, other than to say that the U.S. forces will do everything they have to defend themselves, as is always the case.
Have you took those warnings seriously?
I'm not going to speak to it other than the comment I just made. And I would refer you to the Pentagon for specific comments on U.S. forces.
I have another question on Syria. May I ask now? Or?
No, let's come back to it. Abby, go ahead.
Can I go back to some of these questions about Iran?
Sure.
I know you're not being specific about any U.S. response to their complicity in these attacks, but are you encouraging any of your partners to take actions? For instance, are you asking for countries to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization who haven't done so before?
We absolutely think that other countries should designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. It's a position that we've made clear a number of times. They finance terrorist activities. They have around the world for some time, and we think that other countries should take that step of designating them.
Are you having any specific conversations with your European partners?
I'm sure you've seen the European debate on assistance to the Palestinian Authority, initially talking about a freeze and development assistance and then reversing that. Does the United States have any take on that, and how has the U.S.'s own aid posture been affected by events this weekend?
I believe they did reverse that, which is a step that we welcomed. We have made very clear that we do not have any grievance with the Palestinian people. As I have said from this podium a number of times, we support steps that improve the livelihoods, improve the dignity of the Palestinian people, and we supply humanitarian aid that goes directly to the Palestinian people to benefit them. And I think the point that we would make, this is something the Secretary got into.
There is no like protesters or independent random people in there. Those are all like very much pressed out people. And when you have people screaming at him like that, that is not normal. And they are screaming that they are bullshit. And that is not normal for a department of, a press briefing.
Over the weekend, there are two paths forward for the region. There is a path of stability and conflict and normalization of relations with Israel, and then there is a path of death and destruction, and it is Hamas that favors that path of death and destruction. We do not have any quarrel with the Palestinian people, which is why we think it's important to continue to provide humanitarian aid that directly benefits them, not the terrorists who ultimately are going to be responsible for the loss of many Palestinian lives.
But Israel is
I'm going to ask that we. This room is not a debating session. It's questions and answers. Go ahead.
Matthew.
One, is the U.S. reevaluating its alliance with Qatar given Qatar's support for Hamas? And I want to follow up on Vivian's question about U.S. citizens. So U.S. citizens are having difficulty getting out of Israel. On a personal note, a friend of mine and his wife and two of their friends are trying to get out. They filled out some State Department form and haven't heard back. So what advice do you have for U.S. citizens like them? And then regarding, going off of Matt, I mean, what do you say to the criticism regarding the unfreezing of the $6 billion, that money is fungible?
So I will say that I already answered the question about money being fungible in great detail, I think, with Matt. I can repeat it again, but that probably isn't productive for any of us. I will say, and if they do contact the embassy, we will seek to facilitate travel with any information that we have that can be helpful.
Just a quick one last one.
Yeah.
Does the United States believe that the war between Israel and Hamas will be long?
I'm not going to speculate about the future. Alex, go ahead, and I'll come to you next.
Thank you very much. I have the question about, and thank you, Matt. Why has the Palestinian Authority leader Abbas not condemned the genocide against Israel, and what does that indicate? And I have a follow-up.
So I will let every leader speak to themselves about why they make the statements they do or don't make. But we have been clear about the horrific, violent attacks that were committed against Israel this weekend. We've made clear what the United States position is on that matter, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay, secondly, how is the Palestinian Authority's official policy of pay to slay any different from what Hamas did on October 7th?
So I will say that we oppose that policy, and with respect to the aid that we provide through humanitarian organizations to the region, we comply fully with the Taylor Force Act that prevents any U.S. funds from being used in that regard. Alex, go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. Anything you can tell us about perceived Russian involvement in Russian connections with Hamas?
I don't have any evidence of that to speak to at this moment.
Can you speak to some of the efforts on your end to figure out why everyone was so blindsided, Israel and US?
Look, I think there will be a time to look at those kind of questions about intelligence. I'm sure that the Israeli government will take that very seriously. But I believe that their focus right now is responding to these attacks. Our focus right now is helping support them as they respond to those attacks and getting the security system.
That answer is the kind of thing that makes me think red flag. That is the kind of answer that makes me feel like this is a red flag. I'm not saying it is, but I get that feeling that maybe they want war so bad they're willing to do this kind of stuff to start it. We've done that. We've done worse.
Since they need to do so effectively, and that's our focus right now. There will be a time to answer those questions.
If you just one more, if I may. Given everything you have told us, that you know that Iran knew this was coming. At what point
I don't believe that's exactly what I said, but
yeah, I'm just given the suggestions coming from the Hill. At what point the administration will be open to reconsidering it, to reverse course on Iran? Are you waiting for other shoes to drop, or is there any active?
I don't know what you mean by reverse course on Iran. As I've said, we've imposed more than 400 sanctions on Iran since the beginning of this administration, precisely because we've seen their support for terrorism. We've seen the way they've added conflict and instability to the region, and we will continue to hold them accountable for those actions.
Come back to me later.
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll.
So follow up on what Alex is saying about Russia, because you've repeatedly warned any other entities to not to take advantage of the situation. Does that include Russia? Because we've heard President Zelensky saying that Russia is seeking to exacerbate the conflict and to distract from its war. So do you agree with him? And also on to follow up on what Saeed was saying, is the concrete example of the siege that Israel is laying, is that okay in your book? I mean, is that do you approve that the Israeli approach so far?
I will say, with respect to the first question, that the president was quite clear on Saturday when he spoke to this, and he was quite clear when he spoke to this question earlier today, that no one hostile to Israel should look to this moment to take advantage of the current conflict. And I don't have anything to add to elaborate to that question. With respect to the second question, look, as I said, it is Hamas who launched these terrorist attacks against Israel. It is Hamas who brutalized Israeli civilians. Israel has every right to respond forcefully to these attacks. It is what any country would do if they saw children being dragged away as hostages, if they saw children being slaughtered, if they saw people that were a music festival being gunned down in mass. Any country would respond forcefully. We support Israel's right to do it. We think it's appropriate to do it. They have to be able to defend and secure their country. Go ahead.
Thank you. Ghazi Hamid, a Hamas spokesman, meanwhile told the BBC that the group had direct backing for the attack on Israel from Iran. Do you want to comment on it?
We have seen those quotes. We don't have any independent information to verify that.
If another Iranian proxy on the region gonna join this battlefield with Israel, what will be the reaction?
I'm not going to speak to hypotheticals, but the message that we have delivered very clearly from the president on down is that no entity hostile to Iran should consider entering this conflict. Go ahead.
Yeah, in March, you condemned Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, for calling for wiping the Palestinian.
Hawk the Herald, do I know this voice? I recognize this voice. Oh, I do.
Village of Huwara off the map. This week, we've heard the defense minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, declare that he's fighting human animals in Gaza as Israel cuts off the gas, the water, and the electricity. We've heard Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, declare that all hiding places will be turned to rubble in a besieged coastal enclave where there are 1 million children. We've heard Ariel Kalner, who is a member of Knesset from the ruling Likud party, call for a Nakba 2.0, which is essentially a call for genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians as 850 are dead in Gaza. So what do you think of that rhetoric in light of your previous condemnation?
Let me say a few things about that. Number one, we expect, as we said, that Israel will conduct its operations in accordance with international law. Number two, there are going to be a number of statements made over the course of this conflict, and when we have disagreements with them, we will make those known privately. Number three, though, let me just speak to this. Number three, some of the questions I'm getting today do seem to ignore the fact that Israel just had hundreds of its citizens killed, people who were taken hostage, and pretend that Israel shouldn't be able to conduct any kind of. Let me just say, because let me just.
80 Palestinian children have been killed? Do you acknowledge that? Will you even acknowledge that?
Let me finish.
Let's all remember real quick here for some facts. Palestine is not a separate country. This is a group of people within a nation, right? Like, those are not borders. There is not a two-state solution at the moment. There's one country there. It is Israel, with a Palestinian territory or province inside of it, be it as it may. So this would be, in America, essentially, this would be like America carpet bombing a Native Indian preserve, a Native American preserve, right? That's what we're looking at. We're carpet bombing. We are responding and carpet bombing a entity within our own nation, because they're not separate nations. This is not war amongst nations. It is one nation. It is an oppressed people within a nation. It's not two countries fighting each other. These aren't borders. This is one nation. There's not a two-state solution. There's one state right now. And they talk about it like it's war amongst nations, like it's a terrorist attack from a evil country. This isn't another evil country. It's a territory within their own nation.
You know what? Again, you asked a question. I will answer the question.
Okay, that's my question.
So I'm going to start by answering the previous question that was interrupted. I will say some of the questions seem to pretend that Israel should not be able to conduct operations to defend itself and hold accountable the terrorists who killed civilians. That is not Israel's policy. That is not our policy. It is something that we would vehemently disagree with. Israel has the right to secure its country the way any country does. It has the right to defend itself against terrorism. It has the right to hold terrorists accountable. And I will say, ultimately, the Hamas terrorists who launched these operations, there is no one who has more disregard for Palestinian civilian life than those terrorists. Because those terrorists, let me finish. Those terrorists launched this activity. Those terrorists, again, we seem to have a lot of new people. Those terrorists launched this activity knowing that there would be retaliation, knowing that Israel would have to defend itself as any country did, knowing that it would lead to the unfortunate loss of civilian lives by Palestinians, and they did anyway. Let me go ahead.
That's amazing.
So baby killing is okay here.
Why can't you acknowledge
And he's going to get some pushback on that, obviously. That bullshit right there. He's going to get some pushback. Pretty good on this. Again, the reason we watched almost this whole thing, I'm clipping through a little bit, but it's because, he actually had people question him. People actually had legitimate secondary follow-ups, and he blew a lid. He couldn't handle it. He could not handle being questioned. Our DOS press briefing secretary couldn't handle being pressed in the briefing. All right, no more lame jokes.
We always mourn the loss of civilian life. It is an unfortunate circumstance every time it happens. And as I just said, the Hamas terrorists who launched this terrorist attack, knowing that it would produce the loss of not just direct Israeli lives, who they took in their incursions across the border, but also the loss of Palestinian civilian life. They ultimately bear the responsibility for those acts. Go ahead.
Matt,
Go ahead. Go
is there
ahead.
a
Go.
latest-
Go. I just did do that. I would ask you not to talk over your colleague. Go ahead.
Matt, thank you. Is there a latest U.S. assessment
I just did.
on Saudi's
I'm gonna-
position
go
regarding
ahead.
the potential normalization deal with Israel? And
Go ahead. There was a little talking over you. Why don't you go ahead and go again?
Gotta leave it at that evil laugh. He will not answer questions that do not follow into the line of questioning into his Overton window, right? He won't answer questions outside of the Overton window. Oh, that's so evil. That is perfect. We're gonna leave it right there. We're gonna leave it right there for the DOS. And we will move into some good old-fashioned independent clips. I think we're gonna start out with Medhurst's, but let's fade into saying hello. All right, computer didn't die on it. I like it. I have gotten this computer to the point where I can at least stream, but we will be starting with a new computer, a new setup tomorrow, starting from scratch with Streamlabs instead of this. Is the only thing that worked for my 13-year-old laptop, but brand new tomorrow. We will be setting it up tomorrow and streaming tomorrow night, doing some old school debates, just some warm-up debates. You know, we gotta break the thing in with a little arguing. But that was our Department of State Israel lead up. You can see over the 3 days last week that they were talking about violence tendencies, meetings happening with Saudis and Israelis, and this buildup. And then when it happened, we're all surprised. It's like, no, we saw it coming. We watched the buildup. So now we will take a few-minute break and then come back to some independent clips. Our few-minute break is going to be a comedy break. I like these mental cleansers, and I cannot smoke inside my apartment anymore, so I'm going to go outside. I'll be in the chat still. I will be in the chat, and then after the comedy clip, I'll be a little more baked, and we can get serious again. God, that's an evil fucking smile, though. Look at that shit-eating grin on him. It's horrible. Dude should be allowed in public. Goodbye, jerk. Mr.
Home
Show.
of the I'm just resting my eye.
Home of the my favorite clip from any show, any sketch show ever. Crack. It's great. Gets you really high. If you don't know, you should check out Mr. Show. Can't watch it on here. Nope. Can't do that. Nope. Actually, I could do the crack episode, though. We should do that. It's great. Gets you really high.
When you hear the news, it's negative. It's bad. Well, today is not one of those days. What Hamas did, along with some of the other brigades, right? So if we're talking about Al-Qassam brigades, that's with Hamas, Sari al-Quds are with Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ. They have humiliated Israel to an unprecedented degree. You know, I used to think that 2006, the war with Lebanon in 2006, that was bad for Israel, and it was, right? I thought that was a real humiliation because the Israelis thought, oh, we're going to just go in and flatten Beirut, and they did. But they thought they're going to do it without any consequences, and then all of a sudden you have Hezbollah, not only fighting back against them and pushing them back and forcing them to cut the whole thing short after 33 days, but on top of that, they almost sunk an Israeli ship. Okay, so you had Hezbollah coming out of the ground. So I thought that was bad. No. That was nothing. That was a scratch compared to today. Let me show you what's been happening, okay? I'm going to show you. So what they did is, what the Palestinians did is they launched an operation against Israel at the crack of dawn, right? And let me just remind you, by the way, of the date is the 7th, right? 7th of October. So it's almost, it's 50 years plus 1 day, right? Since the Yom Kippur war in 73, okay? That was also a surprise attack. Man, no one expected this. No one expected this. If the Israelis, had just an inkling, just one suspicion that something like this was going to happen, they would have assassinated a lot of them and they would have done a million things. No one knew this is coming. I just want to convey and impress upon you the professionalism, the organizational skills, the tactics employed here. These men who executed this operation, they were professional, they were quick, they were swift, and they're bringing justice because they're taking back their own land. I mean, every single day we're supposed to cheer Slava Ukraina because the Ukrainians are liberating their land. Well, I'm sorry, but the Palestinians, they have a much bigger and stronger case to bring forward. They've been doing it for 70 years, and that's not counting the British occupation. So how about we cheer for them, huh? So let me show you what happened. This is one of the videos. I swear, this is not even the best one. It's so funny because it reminds me of World War I. Back then in World War I, they didn't know how to drop bombs from the air the way they did in World War II, right? They just didn't have the technology and the know-how. So they would manually just go up in a balloon, in a Zeppelin, or, in an aircraft and just throw it overboard. This was done with a drone, obviously. But there's an Israeli tank and they're just destroying it, man. It's gone. Look. We keep hearing how the Israelis, they're, of course, they're the chosen people, right? They're superior to us and that they're superior to the Palestinians, which is why Israel is a democracy as long as you're a white Jew. In any case, we keep hearing how the Israelis are so, technologically advanced and they're better than everybody and they always know how to outsmart everybody. I'll come back to this in a second, but I just want to go through the clips. Look at these people running away. They are actually running away in droves, right? Now, the thing is that, this is what they did to the Palestinians in the Nakba. The Nakba in Arabic, it means disaster, catastrophe, because it was the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, right? So this is we're talking about May 1948. So this is the end of the British mandate. And we were kind of just like, let's lump this onto the UN, and knowing full well the UN won't do anything, and knowing full well there are Zionist militias, Haganah, Hashemir, who've been there for decades now, just mass emigrating, assassinating British officers, British soldiers, like the King David Hotel bombing, by the way, assassinating Arabs, even assassinating Jews who were not, who were anti-Zionist just because they're anti-Zionist. So, I just want to show you how the difference here, because the Palestinians, they're also running, but they're not running back, away to Europe. The Palestinian mentality is like, this is my land. I'm going to run towards you. And if I die liberating the land, then so be it. Then so be it. These guys they're not willing to fight for this land because they're cowards and because they have the option, the luxury of being able to go back to Europe. Many Israelis have dual citizenship, even triple citizenship. Not the majority of them, but many of them, right? Like how this made me feel like seeing people, in my class when I was in school, talking about like someone from Russia, for example, or from Ukraine or whatever, from Eastern Europe, saying like they're going on holiday in Tel Aviv, and my cousin who's Palestinian can't go there. He's not allowed, right? He can't go back to Palestine, right? Because his grandfather's been turned into a refugee during the Nakba. Like, you see how ridiculous that is, right? So they're running away like cowards. Literally, the video speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. Now hold on, I've got more. So before they went in, this image right here of this bulldozer tearing down the fence is something that you are going to find in the history books. I swear to God, mark my words. This image right here of a Palestinian commandeering an Israeli bulldozer that is used to destroy Palestinian homes and Palestinian infrastructure and ethnically cleanse Palestine, commandeering this vehicle to now do the opposite and tear down the fence. I almost sounded like Reagan for a second. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. No, but seriously, the Israelis, they've, people think like, oh, well, the Berlin Wall is a thing of the past and there's nothing like this in the world. Oh, no. Go to Palestine if you can, and you will see that the Israelis have watchtowers. They have this giant concrete wall that they've erected. And we're talking about Gaza, right? So this attack, when we're talking about Hamas, is coming from Gaza, which is isolated, which is besieged, which is under embargo, right? Which the Israelis destroy it, and then people try to rebuild. Not allowed. Oh, you're not allowed to bring in concrete. It could be used for explosives. You're not allowed to bring in this and that. It could be used for explosives. Just like making sure that they live in rubble, actual rubble, no rebuilding. So seeing them now, emancipate themselves, liberate themselves, how satisfying it is. How satisfying it is to witness this. All of the stuff that's going on, BRICS, the coups in Niger, right? People kicking out a colonizer, People in Niger, the colonized, telling France, the colonizer, to get out. And now the Palestinians telling the Israelis, get out. It is satisfying. This is decolonization. You are witnessing real decolonization right now before your very eyes. Savor it. Savor it. Here are Palestinians just partying, parading the destroyed or commandeered Israeli armored vehicles that have now been captured, right? I'm not even halfway done. I'm not even halfway done. So now they've been taking prisoners, right? They've been taking prisoners, POWs, prisoners of war. And here's one of the videos. Now you might be thinking, what are they doing to this poor girl? Oh no, she's just a poor girl. Look at these savages, just like, driving off away with her screaming. She's in the army. You can see the military slacks. That's an Israeli uniform. If you are in Israel, whether you are male or female, you have to go do your quote unquote military service. Right now, over the years, less and less people do it because they try to, basically, wiggle their way out of having to do it. But that's a different discussion, right? The point is that it is mandatory, and she's not an innocent woman who just happened to be there. No, she's in the Israeli army. She's actively participating in genocide, in ethnic cleansing, in occupation that is, brazenly illegal under international law. And no one is hurting her. I have not seen a single video or photo, not a shred of evidence that any quote-unquote civilian has been harmed, right? Because I say quote-unquote because when they were asking the Syrian ambassador, Bashar al-Jafari, the Syrian ambassador to the UN, about, if Syria gets the Golan Heights back from Israel, what happens to all the settlers? Well, to the civilians, as the journalist, the reporter put it. And he said there are no civilians there. These are illegal settlers. Right, so always keep this in mind, especially when we're talking about the West Bank. But generally speaking, it's not just the West Bank; it's all of Palestine. These are European settlers. They are occupying Palestinian land, and they know what they're doing, right? And no one is punishing them. But she you shouldn't feel sorry for her. She's not no one is doing anything anyway. It's the same video. I'll just keep it rolling. All right. Here are some more photos of the operation, how they were going in, right? So again, at the crack of dawn, you can see there's an Israeli flag on the pole here, and they're going in like special forces, and then with the motorcycles, cutting through the fence, going in, and this fence again, it's the same one that the bulldozer was going through. This is a fence that has been erected to isolate and besiege Gaza. Okay, it is an apartheid fence. It's an illegal fence. You can call it whatever you want. You can think of anything negative.
This is how I think of the fence. The fence makes it an open-air prison because they're not two countries. This is not a border because it is not two countries. It is a imprisonment, like the internment camps that we put Japanese people in, or some of our more imprisoning camps for the Trail of Tears and that kind of stuff. Like we're witnessing what we did to the Native Americans, what we did to the Japanese, and we're just watching it happen. What we're currently doing to people trying to cross the border, from escaping from their homes. They don't want to leave their home. People don't want to leave. That's a whole other thing. Jesus.
And it will qualify for that description. But if you think the motorbikes are funny, I swear to God, this next clip that I'm about to show you, this is real. This was they professionally filmed this operation, and they released the video, and I'm impressed. I'm impressed. This looks like something out of Hollywood. I swear to God, you guys are not ready. Just watch. This is from today. Look at that, man. They're coming with parachutes and everything. Screw the motorbikes. They're flying in. They are actually flying in. How much more badass can you get? Just flying in with a Kalashnikov. No wonder they caught the Israelis with their pants down. No wonder. And so they're very upset now. Netanyahu is very, very upset. But I'll get to him in a second. Look at this video of the Israelis, not just themselves, fleeing the scene, but some of them are even trying to take their jets with them. They're like, save the planes. We'll need them later, to bomb civilians in Gaza. Quick. So there's that. And then And then here, more people fleeing.
כל החסידים שיוצאים עכשיו מרחבת הכותל עם הרבי שלהם, עם הספרי.
You know, notice no one, there's no sound of gunfire. No one is hurting them. They just know that, you know, okay, well, we have to leave now because we're squatting. This is, and you know, many of them have the chance to leave, of course, because they are not native to Palestine. Even if they're from next door, you know, if you're an Iraqi Jew or a Syrian Jew, you're not from Palestine technically, right? Even if we're going to, okay, in Pan-Arabism, yes, I understand, but we're talking about Israel that has, you know, purposely made sure that all Jews who are in Iraq feel unsafe, right? It even bombed synagogues to bring them over and to populate Palestine so that it could, you know, present itself to the world as the Jewish state and so on, right? And so the problem with that is that you not only oppress the people, you know, who are living there, and this is the biggest crime of all, but, you know, these guys that are fleeing now, and again, I'm only showing you, I'm only showing you 2 videos in the first hour, right? There will be many more as we go along. They obviously don't feel safe either. I find this bewildering that you would like purposely go all the way to Palestine and risk your own life and your family's life, knowing full well that you are not welcome there because you're living on somebody else's land, right? Like, anyway, you guys probably remember that British woman that I'm hinting at. Here's Netanyahu, who crawled out of his hole. Okay, so I told you they started at the crack of dawn. Netanyahu didn't say anything for hours and hours and hours, and I find this so peculiar. Even Biden, like as I'm speaking to you right now, has not said anything. So here's Netanyahu. All right, I'll play his speech to you.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה, לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון, הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים והמחבלים.
Peculiar. Even Biden, like as I'm speaking to you right now, has not said anything. So here's Netanyahu. All right.
All right, I'll do his reading. I will talk for Yahoo, and I am going to slow it way down.
I'll play his speech to you.
I'll play it. I'll play it. We are at war, not in an operation or in rounds, but war. This morning, Hamas launched a murderous surprise attack against the state of Israel and its citizens. We have been in this since the early morning hours. I converted the heads of security administration and ordered, first of all, to clear out the communities that have been infiltrated by terrorists. This currently is being carried out. And at the same time, I have ordered an extensive mobilization of reserves and that we return fire of a magnitude that the enemy has not known. The enemy will pay an unprecedented price. In the meantime, I call on the citizens of Israel to strictly adhere to the directives of the IDF and Homefront. Confirmed, we are at war, and we will win it. Ugh.
Palestinians, that, you know, they've been at war the whole time. I'm not really sure they take this quite seriously because they're constantly at war because of the way you treat them, because of how Israel treats them. Whether they like it or not, they are at war and they are in a permanent state of occupation. So he's acting like, oh, we're gonna deliver an unprecedented punishment. What punishment? We're talking about Gaza here. You've destroyed their homes. You've destroyed their families. You make sure they can't even import cement to rebuild. They have literally nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose. So this is just hot air. Netanyahu can barely even stay in power. People in his own country, right? The Israelis, never mind the Palestinians, the Israelis hate his goddamn guts. So now he's like, he wants to mobilize everybody. Dude, they're running the other way. They are running 100 miles in the other direction because they know that this is not a battle that you can win. When you go to somebody else's home turf, you're on somebody else's home turf, you never win. You never win. You can try it for decades, you know, like the French or the Americans in Indochina or Vietnam. You're not going to win. And the same goes for the Israelis. You know, they might look like they're winning for a while. They don't win in the end. This is why they were caught with their pants down. Here, some more footage. I can't play all of it because it gets a bit spicy at the end. But look at this. You can see them just, they're casually going through the obstacles, which I find kind of funny because it's like they don't even bother hiding. It's the Israelis that have gone to hide. Yeah, so that's another one of the Israeli tanks just smoking. And I will just narrate the rest of the video to you. Basically, they start dragging the Israelis out of the tank by their hair. It's not very pretty. Now I want to show you Mélenchon, who is the equivalent of Bernie Sanders in France. Okay, so he's the top left leader. He came third in the presidential elections last year in France. Okay. And I want to show you what he said. You can probably guess already what he said, right? Like you already know what it's going to be. You already know what it's going to be. So he's saying here basically that, toute la violence déchaînée contre Israël et à Gaza ne prouve qu'une chose, la violence ne produit et ne reproduit qu'elle-même. So he goes on and basically says like, oh, there has to be a ceasefire and, violence begets more violence and so on and so on. He tries to like paint it as like, it's both sides. They're both wrong. They're equally bad and, equally violent. No, they're not. No, they're not. They are not. You have Israel, which receives billions, which has a conventional, has conventional armed forces, a navy, an air force. It has drones, which is its own thing. It has a cyber warfare division. It's got so much, not just financial support, but also political cover from the West that it's bulletproof, or used to be until this morning. So to compare that to the Palestinians, who literally have no air force, they have no navy, because this is Gaza, right? We're talking about. That launched the attack. You're not even allowed to fish. It's on the goddamn sea. You cannot go fishing. They'll let like three fishermen go for a few meters. But beyond that, no. And if you're a child playing on the beach, well, you already know what happens to Palestinian children who play on the beach in Gaza. So, I find this disgusting. This is such a couille molle in French, right? Like such a...
There's 7 more. What do we got here? The most watched part of this is going to be in the next couple minutes here, and then we will move on. So I dropped the link, but we're going to get a few more minutes through. We got to watch the next part at least.
I don't know. It's such a weak, pussyfoot reaction. Like, what is this? Oh, it's both sides. There has to be a ceasefire. There's been a ceasefire for 75 years in their eyes, right? Like, as long as the Palestinians shut up, and then they drop this word, oh, two-state solution. And like every time the Palestinians, not just Palestinians, by the way, whether it's Syria, whether it's Lebanon, anytime they try to defend themselves against the Israelis, then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we need a ceasefire. Please, everybody, you're both being violent. You need to stop. And then when the Israelis, they're like bombing Beirut, they're bombing Gaza, they're bombing Damascus, they're bombing Aleppo, they're bombing Latakia, they're bombing Quneitra. I don't see Mélenchon going on Twitter or his stupid staffers going on Twitter and saying, oh, there has to be a ceasefire. You know why? Because they don't give a crap. As long as Israel is the one calling the shots, or I should say literally firing the shots, that's fine. That's fine. But as soon as you try to defend yourself against the Americans, against the Europeans, against the Israelis, now all of a sudden, oh, guys, you need to have a ceasefire. And he says, oh, the Palestinians have to learn to, the Israelis and Palestinians need to learn to live with each other side by side. No, they absolutely the fuck do not, okay? You have Jews, you have Christians, you have Muslims that have been living in the Middle East side by side for thousands of years. Israelis are European settlers, they're colonizers. No one on earth needs to accept them or any other colonizers, whether they're French in Algeria or in, anywhere else. No one needs to accept that. You do not have to live side by side in peace with somebody who steals your land, who comes all the way from goddamn Europe to steal your land. And even if they came from next door to steal your land, Palestinians are under no obligation to accept this shit. Do I make myself clear? Well, I don't really need to. I think they made themselves quite clear this morning. Man, I cannot overstate to you guys how embarrassing this is for Israel. This is not just like some battle that happened. You don't understand how bad this is. The Israelis had they had no clue. No idea what just hit them, man. None. It gets worse. It gets worse. You know what happened as well? I told you the Palestinians have been capturing Israeli soldiers and taking them as prisoners, right? This is going to be, they're not going to torture them or hurt them. On the contrary, they want to keep them alive because they're going to use them to do prisoner swaps later on, which is very smart. And actually the diplomatic thing to do, right? And you're being too nice to the Israelis at this point, but nevertheless, jokes aside, there is one person that they captured this morning. You are not going to believe this. I swear to God. Caught with his pants down. This is Nimrod Aloni. Nimrod Aloni. So this guy is a general in the Israeli army, and not only a general, but also the commander of the Depth Corps. Okay, not death, depth. Okay, so the the idea behind this, it's a special forces unit. The idea behind this is that, these soldiers in the Israeli special forces will go deep and penetrate deep behind enemy lines and operate, in very, very, very tight conditions and so on. And so obviously this requires a lot of skill, right? It requires a lot of good intelligence. It requires a lot of pragmatism, a lot of thinking on your feet. Caught with his pants down. Look at him dragged out like some child. They dragged him out of his house barefoot like a child. This is a fucking general. A special forces general. Look at this clown. This is so, so, so humiliating and so sweet. I love it. This is justice. This is sweet. Savor it. My goodness, how humiliating. If you had any ideas or misconceptions that the Israelis are so smart, which is what they want you to think, right? They want you to think, the Mossad are so intelligent. Israel has the best technology. It almost sounds like Trump talking, right? And he gave Israel a lot of things, right? A lot of concessions. We have the best special forces. They force their way everywhere. Very special people. I love them. The Israelis go and put the story in the New York Times that when they killed this Iranian nuclear scientist Fakhrizadeh outside Tehran, it's not only that they killed him, they assassinated him. No. You see, the Israelis, their brains are so big, they're the size of the galaxy. And what they did is they smuggled in a robot gun that is controlled by artificial intelligence into Iran, and piece by piece. Wow, I mean, you see how smart they are? They're this smart. As you can see. The Israelis they're...
All right, Richard Medhurst, Middle Eastern in Britain, somewhere in London, I believe. Good channel. I had not watched his take. This was the day of the attack. So I always find it interesting to, kind of filter through timelines and whatnot. So he posted this, 6 days ago. And I checked out the link, put it in there. We watched 25 minutes of 57 minutes. That's close enough to half for me. We got a lot of long videos to check out tonight. I'm doing a longer stream, but still a lot to get to. Okay, so this one is going to be from 2 years ago, how Britain started the Arab-Israeli conflict. So as we had about an hour and a half ago, we went through the DOS, and the DOS had some interesting conversations, but a big problem is that Saudi Arabia and Israel were having conversations, and that leads into a conflict. So let's take a step backwards, huh? What the fuck are we looking at here? Eve? Eve looks pretty cool. I haven't checked it out, but that looks something that'd be cool. With a new computer, maybe. When we get the new computer rolling. So this is from a few years ago.
The bitter struggle between Arab and Jew for control of the Holy Land has caused untold suffering in the Middle East for generations. It is often claimed that the crisis originated with Jewish emigration to Palestine and the foundation of the State of Israel. Yet the roots of the conflict are to be found much earlier, in British double-dealing during the First World War. This is a story of intrigue among rival empires, of misguided strategies, and of how conflicting promises to Arab and Jew created a legacy of bloodshed which has determined the fate of the Middle East.
During the First World War, the British, the French, and the Russians had these secret plans to...
Okay, so we're gonna watch through the most watched part here. What is this? Fucking 14 minutes? So we'll watch 15 minutes of this at very fast speeds. Sorry if you don't like it. I watch a lot of stuff, a lot of speedy stuff, so we will watch the first 15 minutes of this and then move on to Mint Press News. Mint Press News being more recent, this being just a little history rebuff, little history refresh.
Of the Ottoman Empire, because they believed that would balance out their imperial ambitions, but tough luck for the Turks, the Arabs, and anyone else who got in the way.
Certainly, all the seeds were planted then, in the sense that it was the British who promised the Arabs independence on the one hand, and a Jewish homeland on the other. and you could not simply reconcile one with the other.
The British scattered promises to anyone who might be of some use to them without thinking about the consequences. So British duplicity, British double-dealing went a long way to perpetuate the conflict in Palestine.
At the end of the day, when you're fighting a war, you are very liberal in what you're offering in terms of a post-war settlement. When you get down to the conference table when the war has ended and you have to start honouring your agreements, you then have to decide what's in your interest or not. And the British saw the Middle East as a Western flank for their power in India and their power in Asia in general.
The story of Britain's involvement in the Middle East and the ensuing struggle between Arab and Jew begins with her colonial past. At the beginning of the 20th century, King Edward VII ruled over a vast empire with interests in every part of the world.
India became increasingly important because it was the second pillar of British power in the world. Moving the Indian army about was extremely important in extending British interests and British influence across the globe. And the Suez Canal was, of course, the quick way to do that. It's very important for the British geopolitical position to ensure the Suez Canal remains safe and secure.
With this aim in mind, Britain had become the only European power to establish a major foothold in the Middle East, in the principalities around the Persian Gulf, in Aden, and in Egypt. Britain had annexed Egypt from Turkey's Ottoman Empire in 1882, and by the time it was made a protectorate in 1914, Cairo had become the center of British power in the Middle East. The presence of imperial troops in the region was of vital strategic importance, for the Ottoman Empire under Sultan Muhammad V was in alliance with Britain's much-feared rival, Germany. Together with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, these countries made up the Central Powers, and pitted against them were the three allies, Britain, France, and Russia.
Enlisted is the free, brand new online World War II shooter.
So I like how Richard Medhurst, who's an independent journalist giving us good information, does not get many commercial breaks, but we watch one documentary for 2 minutes and we get a commercial break already. Interesting stuff, YouTube. Interesting stuff. I would have rather paid Richard than whatever History Channel bullshit this is.
The Sultan ruled over the last of the great Islamic empires. It had been in almost terminal decline for decades. Yet the fate of the Ottoman Empire was to be sealed by the outbreak of the First World War in August 1914. In Europe, Germany's rapid advance was halted by Britain and France along the Western Front. In the east, Russia's war against Germany and Austria-Hungary also reached deadlock. The powerful weapons of the industrial age were killing thousands of men in the trenches of every army.
All of the leading powers expected the war to be over within a matter of months. So in that sense, all of them are surprised at the end of 1914, when not merely is the war going on, but it shows every sign of being likely to go on for a very long time. At that point, they began to think about new ways of winning the war.
Britain's Prime Minister Asquith felt that with the stalemate in Europe, it was essential to widen the conflict. Together with Foreign Secretary Lord Grey, Minister for War Lord Kitchener, and the First Lord of the Admiralty Winston Churchill, they masterminded a complex strategy to undermine the Central Powers.
This was a global war, and the British saw the Middle East very much in a global context. The traditional British preference for sideshows, as people unfavorably call it, the indirect strategy, the way of attacking the soft underbelly, as Churchill called it, of the enemy. And the soft underbelly was seen to be Turkey.
Britain's secret plan involved on the one hand a military diversion, and on the other a devious use of diplomacy through bribery, subversion, and double-dealing. All these devices focused on the enemy's weakest link, Turkey's Ottoman Empire.
Diplomacy in general has always had a secret dimension to it. Where discretion ends and conspiracy begins is an open question. But during the period up to and during the First World War, there was a particularly intense set of negotiations and discussions between the major imperial powers, between the French, the Russians, and the British in particular, cutting in the Italians as well, about what would they do when the war was over and when the Ottoman Empire broke up.
The British government hoped that by striking a deal over the spoils of war, it would strengthen the alliance against the Central Powers. Amongst the Allies, Russia had long sought access to the Mediterranean. In a secret treaty of March 1915, Britain and France offered what was to the Tsar a prize of vital geopolitical importance, Constantinople.
It is that key outlet into the wider world and into the Mediterranean. And it is the one thing, of course, the British and the French have been attempting to prevent the Russians from achieving. So this is a complete volte-face. This is the British, the French, and the Russians coming to an agreement over something which was, up to this point, almost inconceivable.
That's crazy. So Western powers gave Russia Constantinople to get more power in the Middle East. That's kind of wild.
Italy's King Vittorio Emanuele was another target for bribery. Britain, France and Russia tried to tempt Italy, a pro-German state, to join the Allies. In April 1915, a secret treaty offered Italy a substantial bit of Ottoman real estate in Anatolia.
Again, it's another power coming into the equation and being offered territorial advancement, which in normal circumstances would have been quite inconceivable.
The bribe worked. Italy joined the Allies and declared war on the Central Powers in August 1915. But Britain's strategy to undermine the enemy via the Ottoman Empire also required subversion. By using domestic opposition to weaken, maybe even destroy it, Britain exploited a new movement sweeping through the empire: nationalism.
Nationalism, in the sense of believing that there are peoples with a clear cultural identity and that these people should live independent, that idea spread to the Middle East as to other parts of the world in the latter part of the 19th century. So you had the beginnings in the Ottoman Empire of a Turkish nationalism.
This came to a head when the Young Turks took power in a coup in 1908 and started to impose their language and culture on the Arabs of the empire. But this only reawakened an interest amongst Arabs in their own heritage. A 1,000 years before, Arabs had brought the technology and literature of the East to the West, and their religion, Islam, had encompassed much of Asia, North Africa, and southwestern Europe. The idea of recovering that historic grandeur had remained in the consciousness of Arab intellectuals. By the start of the First World War, the antagonism between Arab and Turk had increased.
The very fact that the Turks were saying, we want to have a unified empire, meant the Arabs said, wait a minute.
They just throw some picture of a guy looking frustrated. Oh, that's funny. That's their whole thing.
We're not part of this. So all of this literary and nationalistic revival then took a much more political form, and therefore you got the emergence of Arab nationalism.
They had arrived at the conclusion that remaining in the Ottoman Empire was becoming hopeless, that they couldn't actually share power with the Turks. And they began thinking of having their own state.
By the summer of 1915, British intelligence confirmed that the Arab nationalist movement was the breakthrough the government was looking for. Britain and her French ally dispatched officers to sound out Arab leaders.
Both the French and the British started, you could say, seducing various local Arab leaders, that if you side with us, we'll give you your independence, so why don't you leave the Ottomans? And various people were tempted as a result. If they thought they could actually gain independence, why not side with the Europeans against the Ottomans?
The idea was to tempt the Arabs into a revolt against their Ottoman overlords and create a diversion which would tie down the Central Powers in the Middle East. Ironically, the impetus for such a diversion had come not from London, but from the Arab world. In the Hijaz, in western Arabia, Sharif Hussein, its ruler, was set on extending his political and geographical domain. He believed he might be able to do it with the help of the British. In turn, the British were impressed by Sharif Hussein's family credentials as custodians of the holy places of Islam.
They called themselves Hashemites. They called the family Hashemites because that's the family or the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad. They were the Bani Hashim, the sons of Hashim. So Sharif Hussein was the leader of the Hashemites. He was the person responsible for Mecca and Medina. And although he'd worked with the Ottomans before the First World War, once the First World War happened, he saw this was his chance.
A chance, too, for the British, who saw support for Sharif Hussein as a way to threaten the Sultan's hold on the Caliphate, the political leadership of the Islamic world.
The British, because they were fighting the Ottomans, and the Ottomans were claiming to be the real representatives of Islam, they wanted a counterforce. And the counterforce was represented by Sharif Hussein, being a descendant of the Prophet. But Sharif Hussein was speaking of liberating Arab lands, building a new national state. He wanted to be king of the Arabs, not simply of Arabians.
In July 1915, Sharif Hussein smuggled a message to the British High Commissioner in Cairo, Sir Henry McMahon, offering to raise a substantial Arab force against the Ottomans in return for British support for Arab independence. In the ensuing secret correspondence between the two men, Sharif Hussein was given to understand that he could expect British support in achieving some of his ambitions in the event of an Ottoman defeat. This letter of October the 26th, 1915, outlined the main points of the arrangement.
The actual document itself is absolutely riven with ambiguity. There's no doubt about that. The question is whether Hussein recognizes that. My sense of Hussein is that he does recognize it. In other words, there is no wool being pulled over his eyes, because he's perfectly aware that if he's going to create a modern Arab empire, he's going to need some logistical, economic development, and that can only come from the outside world.
Are you a YouTuber? Here's how you...
It's a random question as I stream from a service. Do they ask that to you guys too? Do they literally know when we're streaming? I have no concept. I'm a little bit worried though. Not gonna lie.
Taking Britain's assurances of support at face value, Hussein, together with his sons Faisal and Abdullah, amassed a sizable force. The new army was commanded by the young and charismatic Faisal, who had captured the imagination of the Arab masses in the quest for Arab independence. Yet even as Hussein and Faisal mobilized their troops, the British were preparing to sell them short. Back in London, in the spring of 1916, Britain was negotiating with France about the future shape of the Middle East. Behind closed doors, Sir Mark Sykes of the British Foreign Office had been meeting his French opposite number, Francois-Georges Picot.
I think we can leave that documentary there. France and Britain were discussing how they're going to break up the Middle East, the future of the Middle East. That is not the way the Middle East should be drawn up. Nor should Europe have drawn up Africa, nor should Europe draw up any of the planet. Right? I don't just think that's how it's going to work. I dropped the link in there. You can check out the documentary if you like.
All right, we are now live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live stream on Mint Press. I am Minar Adli. I'm the founder and director of Mint Press News and Behind the Headlines. Today, I'm joined by our senior staff writer and lead investigative journalist, Alan McLeod. And also, we are joined by activist rapper, host of the Watchdog podcast, and our Palestine editor, Low Key. But before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know that our YouTube channel recently got completely demonetized. So we would greatly appreciate your support by becoming a member of our Patreon, which we will link below in the comments. Much of the work that we are doing right now is supported by viewers like yourself. So we'd appreciate any support that you can provide to us. It's obviously been a very, very difficult week watching in real time Israel pummel Gaza, the world's largest open air prison with Western provided bombs targeting civilians, schools, hospitals, residential neighborhoods, electric grids, and water treatment facilities. Some 300 children have died and over 200,000 people have been displaced and made homeless. Thousands more have been injured. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've seen as many videos of dead children in my years of reporting here at Mint Press. So a little bit of background: after Hamas's surprise attack and Palestinians breaking through the Gaza border fence, we've heard Israeli politicians refer to Palestinians as human animals that should be nuked and will be given hell. We've heard similar sentiments from US politicians like Nikki Haley and Lindsey Graham, who have made genocidal calls on Israel to finish them off, level them. Now, so far, the US has sent 6 warships headed by the US Navy's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean Sea this week, raising questions about whether the US will get involved in this war. Israel has targeted Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon and has bombed Syria, all in the same week it was bombing Gaza. This crisis has also ignited a war of narratives, worthy and unworthy victims, and has underlined the Western media's inability to hold Israel accountable for blatant war crimes. But one thing is certain, however: many unverified claims are making the rounds that are being spread by Western media and Israeli government-funded groups, including the claim that Hamas has beheaded 40 babies. So there's a lot to unpack with what is happening in Gaza and deconstructing mainstream media narratives and propaganda. But I would like to start with this story of the unverified claim of the beheaded babies, because it's the perfect example of how unverified claims can circulate and become news, especially when we have the president himself going on live TV, broadcasted to millions of people in this country, saying and claiming that he saw pictures of beheaded babies himself. Well, it turns out the White House has come out in the last 24 hours and clarified that the president actually didn't see any pictures of beheaded babies, and the Israeli military could not confirm these claims. There are Israeli journalists themselves that have been touring with the Israeli military in the south, who have been tweeting that they also have not seen or heard of anything about beheaded babies. Clearly, the first casualty of war is truth. And so this is where I'd like us to begin, and we'll get into the history of what led up to October 7th, when Palestinians broke through the Gaza border fence and the attack happened by Hamas. But first, let's talk about this story. Loki, if you can tell us more about it and how its footing got in within outlets like CNN, who headlined with it yesterday as if it was fact, and why it's most likely fake news.
Well, as has been reported by the Grey Zone in a very important piece, seemingly the original source for the claim was an Israeli soldier and leader of a settler group that had previously, he called for genocidal violence against Palestinians. His name is David Ben Zion. Now, he had given a report to I-24 News claiming that he had seen these dead children. Now, I-24 is important to understand what it is as an institution. It is a company owned by Patrick Drahi, a billionaire who seemingly has close links with Israeli intelligence and also owns several telecommunications companies, not only in France, but even is the top shareholder in British Telecom in this country. But in order for I-24 to procure a particular operating license in Israel, it became closer and closer to the Netanyahu family, in fact, and was seen previously in a Haaretz investigation to be literally cancelling guests at the behest of Benjamin Netanyahu's son. We also know that I-24 had previously been receiving directives directly from the Israeli Prime Minister's office. It is throughout the company staffed by former Israeli military and intelligence, and people that have gone from working for I-24 to working as social media editors at the Israeli military, and then going back into I-24. So what we're talking about, and really it's a wider societal observation, that the integration of the Israeli military in so many different aspects of this settler society is really quite significant and cannot be underestimated. Now, the interesting thing is, from there, the idea took off, and it was then covered by the independent newspaper in England, and the journalist who said she'd heard of it later backtracked on the claim again. So bit by bit, the story kept being backtracked on. And as you mentioned, Joe Biden, the senile US president, who is very much a placeman for those in power behind him, who is sort of pushed out to make these awkward pronouncements that the US security services are constantly trying to catch up with and make up for, really. And that's why the sort of role of White House spokespeople and State Department spokespeople have become so much more important, because the US president is even worse than Trump when it comes to actually articulating ideas in a coherent way. And so Joe Biden then ends up making this speech yesterday, in which he says that he saw evidence, he saw pictures of terrorists beheading children. So he went further from saying that he'd seen that. He said he saw pictures of terrorists doing it. So then that would beg the question, who was taking the picture of the terrorists doing it? And then, interestingly, after the speech, a White House spokesperson then says, actually, the president did not see that. He was speaking on information he had been given by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. And now you've had the Israelis climb down on the claim, but then simultaneous to that, the Jerusalem Post, which is, of course, led by somebody who is a reserve in the Israeli military and has a long history of reproducing Israeli government talking points, has come out and said that they have conclusive evidence. And so really, you see, off the back of that particular claim, in a way, it's often the way things work. If you remember with the killing of Shirin Abu Akleh, you had several bits of mythology established directly after her killing to imply, well, maybe it could be this or maybe it could be that, when actually what we then found was them later having to, if it's okay if we can mute the other two speakers, if it's okay if we can just mute, because some of the clicking is coming through. And basically the point is that what we've seen is, bit by bit, the story come apart in very, very interesting ways. So the lesson in this is, now we've seen the CNN also come out with it, and then CNN again climb down from it. So there's so many ways in which it is clearly not a solid story with a solid foundation. And interestingly enough, the Israeli government, the military secretary, has met with social media influencers and asked them to push particular lines on this war. And for example, you've even seen on YouTube adverts being inserted and directly paid for by the Israeli government, so they carry the Israeli government's logo. These adverts inserted on videos which are aimed at children, and saying in the adverts that Hamas, in quotations, ISIS, in the video, killed 40 children. So we're seeing really this idea being pushed as much as possible. But recently, as in last night, we also saw...
Can I play that video really quick? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please do.
I think it would be really good to see that. And you actually tweeted it out on your Twitter page. And so here's the video. I think that was it, right?
Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, this is the one.
Still, did it play the whole way through?
No, there it is. What the
Yeah.
fuck? It's quite sinister.
Really sinister. And I put it in the link along with another video in the script for today's show. And the other video actually shows the recent interview that was carried out a few hours ago with former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Now, bear in mind that Naftali Bennett is somebody that says that he has killed a lot of Arabs, and that is nothing to be ashamed of in the past. This is somebody who I believe was in the Israeli military during a war with Lebanon. And if we can just show this video, it should be the second to, should be the last link.
1 second.
And what about those Palestinians in hospital who are on life support, and babies and incubators whose life support and incubator will have to be turned off because the Israelis have cut the power to Gaza?
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? Have you not seen what happened? We're fighting Nazis. We don't target them. Now, the world can come and bring them anything they want. If you want to bring them electricity, I'm not going to feed electricity or water to my enemies. If anyone else wants, that's fine. We're not responsible for them.
This is the point.
But you keep on. I want to tell you, listen to me right now. I've heard you enough.
No, I understand. We're trying to have a conversation here. Listen, this is my program. This is my show, and I am asking the questions. You're raising your voice, and I've asked you, and we've already stopped, please. Let me finish. We've already distinguished between Hamas.
I want to tell you, shame on you.
You're trying to speak over.
We are not shame on you.
It's nothing about shame. We're trying to have a conversation about a very serious situation here, and you are refusing to address it.
Jump over immediately, and again,
absolutely not. You are incorrect.
They are responsible, because I can tell you that when the UK,
absolutely
when Great Britain was fighting the Nazis during World War II, no one asked what's going on in Dresden. It was the Nazis targeting London, and you targeted Dresden. So
listen,
shame on you if you go on with that false narrative.
We're not talking about that. And in hindsight, many people have readdressed that kind of carpet bombing.
Oh, I see. Now you're Mr. Clean. Shame on you.
Absolutely not. And I'm not. Listen, Mr. Bennett, I am not in the military. I'm a journalist asking you questions. Are you going to let me ask you a question, or you continue shouting at me? We've already distinguished between Hamas and the Palestinians. I'm asking you very directly. What
do you want to ask?
Is going to be done to make sure that those innocent people don't get killed as innocent Jewish people were killed on Saturday?
Wow. I mean, the arrogance that Bennett portrays is absolutely disgusting. I mean, this is another example of, worthy and unworthy victims that we're seeing within the media landscape.
Absolutely, and this is a perfect example of the rancid scumbag killer that is Naftali Bennett, essentially using the propaganda that has been built up over decades, not just about Palestinians, but about Muslims, to basically provide a foundation for his cruelty on an industrial scale.
Absolutely. And we've seen, unfortunately, similar kind of talking points by US politicians who are directly receiving funding from AIPAC and other lobby groups like Nikki Haley. I'm trying to find the link just because it's so outrageous. But Alan, before we go into that, I'm going to ask Alan what you can make of the headlines that we're seeing within mainstream corporate media in the way that they're portraying Palestinians as unworthy victims and Israelis as worthy victims.
Yeah, most definitely. Unfortunately, when it comes to Palestine, a lot of the time these stories are too bad to be true. And we're seeing so much ludicrous fake news coming out of this place right now that it really takes people, it really means that you've got to spend hours and hours trying to siphon through what is real and what is fake. And most people just don't have time for that. As you said, Israelis are generally portrayed as worthy victims. Palestinians, however, are not worthy of our time. There have been studies after studies showing that every time Israel, quote unquote, mows the lawn, as they call it, the backlash is intense, but the media coverage always centers around Israeli dead and generally ignores or downplays Palestinian dead. Perhaps the best example of this in the last couple of days was that infamous BBC tweet that they put up saying that more than 700 Israelis have been killed. Meanwhile, around 500 Palestinians have died. Now, what they're doing there is using the passive voice and using a very important choice of words there. Israelis are killed, meanwhile Palestinians die. That suggests to the reader that, if you're not paying attention, you might think, well, these people just, had a stroke or had a heart attack or whatever, instead of the fact that they were actually bombed, they were killed, they were shot, whatever. And this happens every single time there is violence in the Middle East. That tweet, by the way, also very interestingly casts Israel as retaliating or responding to the violence, and Palestine, and specifically Hamas, as the initiators of the violence. But of course, the violence didn't start on October 7th. We have, more than 75 years of a continuing Israeli violence against Gaza, against Palestine to go through. And that's really the context that is just that's just always missing from mainstream media reports. Another of the most blatant fake news stories that's been out there is the case of Shani Luke. And hopefully I'm not butchering her name too much, but she attended the Supernova Festival, which was in southern Israel, that was ambushed by Hamas over the weekend. It was widely reported that she was murdered by Hamas. You can see headlines from outlets around the world, from Yahoo News, TMZ, Business Insider, the Daily Mail, etc. And then they were all full of these lurid stories that she was stripped and her naked body was paraded through the streets of Gaza for everybody to gawk at, almost like it was a trophy. This incited huge global anger. This story led headlines and led news bulletins all around the world, and the calls for an overwhelming military response grew on the back of this. There's really only one problem with that, though. Luke was later confirmed to be alive and had actually been taken to hospital. And it turns out that the videos of her, quote unquote, being paraded through the streets on the back of a truck, it seems more likely now that those people were actually driving her to hospital, so they might have actually been saving her life rather than parading her about. Yet few of the outlets that irresponsibly publish this without verifying any of these claims, which are wildly incendiary, have published apologies or even retractions. But it doesn't really matter if they do, because as they always say, a lie gets around the world before the truth has put its pants on. And so ultimately, viewers, readers are left with the idea that Palestine is this barbarous state full of terrorists who just want to harm Israelis all the time, and Israel is a democracy responding to threats in a bad neighborhood. And that ultimately is going to drive so much of Western public opinion when Western governments start announcing new benefits packages, new aid, perhaps even military assistance to Israel in what could be a very bloody coming fight.
And just to add on to some of the mainstream media bias in its coverage towards when it's covering Israel and Palestine, it seems as though, like Loki had said at the very beginning, it's as if everyone has given the same script. Corporate media anchors and journalists and pundits and analysts and reporters and bureau chiefs alike repeat the same line that Israel has the right to defend itself as it bombs Gaza's 2 million Palestinian population, targeting civilians while it's violating international law. And then every time Palestinians are interviewed, they are always asked immediately if they denounce violence and Hamas, and run with unverified stories handed to them a lot of times by the Israeli government. And I want to use the example of the New York Times and how the New York Times is not neutral or in any way close to being objective on this crisis. Not only has the newspaper constantly supported Israel's expansionist policy, it itself has directly participated in the dispossession of Palestinians from their home. I've actually written about this myself, but the New York Times bureau, Jerusalem bureau, is actually built on a Palestinian house, which belongs to a noted Palestinian writer named Ghada Karmi, which Loki has interviewed on our show before, and she's a survivor of the Nakba. She was basically ethnically cleansed from her home to make room for this New York Times bureau. The Times also often cooperates directly with the Israeli military. It publishes unverified claims handed to them by the Israeli military. And in a lot of cases, like in 2014, which is a good example, it received and obeyed an Israeli gag order to suppress the news that Israel had arrested a Palestinian journalist. From 2008 to 2012, the New York Times Israel bureau chief, Ethan Bronner, was also exposed to having his 20-year-old son enlist in the Israeli army while he was actively covering the region for the newspaper. So, and this wasn't even made public by the New York Times. The so-called paper of record never made this public to its readers, and it was actually exposed in an investigation by Electronic Intifada. And it really raised questions, serious questions about the New York Times bias and its conflict of interest in covering the conflict. And most recently, just in the last, I believe the last year or two, the New York Times also fired Gaza photographer Hussam Salem from his following an intervention, from an Israel lobby group called Honest Reporting, which we have covered on our website. And Ethan Bronner, the Jerusalem bureau for the New York Times, is just one example. Other people that work for the New York Times that cover Israel and Palestine include Isabel Kirshner and David Brooks, who've all written about the crisis. And all three of these people have had relatives serving and fighting within the Israeli military. And so that's just one example of one media outlet in the United States that is working directly with the Israeli government, and we cannot rely on to provide even a neutral perspective. So I want to go back.
And please never forget, AIPAC is the biggest lobby in America, lobbying for a nation in the Middle East. One of the most powerful, at least. I don't know if it's the biggest lobby. It's definitely one of the most powerful lobbies.
Back a little bit further, because I think a lot of people are trying to put all of this into perspective and understand, how did we get here? What actually led up to October 7th, when Hamas came in on paragliders and targeted an Israeli settlement at the music festival? And how did Palestinians in Gaza break through the border fence? What actually led up to October 7th? Karim, can you tell us? And by the way, can I ask you a quick question? I'm so sorry. Somebody put in the comments that your song, Terrorist, was removed. Is that true?
As far as I know, it hasn't been removed, but it is. It has an age restriction on it. But I can check now and see if it has been removed. Because to be honest, the way things are going, it wouldn't surprise me. Just before we, yeah, it seems to have been removed. Wow.
Okay, well, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, this song, Terrorist, is one of the most important songs that we all listen to in our 20s and early 30s. Hopefully that won't expose our age here. But that really influenced our understanding of the Israel and Palestine crisis. And it really was empowering to a lot of people in the movement to continue to speak up for Palestine. And I don't know, do you want to talk about this first? Because I'm sure this is a shock to you right now, as you just found out on during a live stream.
Wow. Well, I mean, I knew it was age restricted. It had 5.5 million views and has now seemingly been taken off of YouTube. Wow. What a way to find out. But I guess, the more important issue is Gaza and what you asked about and what you mentioned. Essentially, we are talking about a place where people have every aspect of their life dictated to them in a material way. So what Israel attempted to create with Gaza was a frictionless occupation, meaning that there was as little physical interaction between people in Gaza and Israelis. So Israelis and Palestinians were very far away from each other. The only way Israelis would interact with Palestinians in Gaza was through machinery, like drones, like sniper rifles, for example. We have to remember that the Palestinians have the right of return under UN Resolution 194. And unfortunately, what happened was in 2018, Palestinians, the vast majority of the Palestinian population in Gaza are refugees. They attempted to fulfill their right to return. Now, when they did that, the Israeli military had a policy of shooting them. These people were walking towards the fence unarmed, and they were being shot in their knees. And that's why they said that Gaza is a city of amputees, because you had thousands of Palestinians that have had their knees shot off by Israeli military sniper rifles and sniper rifle components that were sold to them by the British. And obviously now we have the British Navy going to join on the edge of Palestine. We have the US aircraft carrier there as well. I'm so sorry, if it's okay, if we could just mute. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. So the aircraft carrier literally going to the edge of Palestine, and a British spy plane even going across the top of Palestine to assist Israel in this war. So this is a US and British intervention to help Israel in a war against a non-state actor, and essentially the main method that Israel uses to fight this war is collective punishment of a civilian population. And Britain and the United States are now intervening on Israel's behalf and militarily involved in the war against the 2 million people of Gaza. And a lot of this is to avoid Israel committing itself to a land invasion of Gaza, which would be very difficult for the Israeli military because, frankly, these kids from Brooklyn, from Canada, from New York, from Britain, they do not have the steel to go hand to hand and street to street, as has been revealed. They are used, frankly speaking, to bullying unarmed children in Al-Quds, to sitting behind turnstiles and managing populations of Palestinians, to bullying people on the streets of Khalil. They are used to sitting in military bases and controlling drones. They're used to sitting in Unit 8200 where they listen to Palestinian calls and they use that information to blackmail them. That's what the Israeli military today is used to doing. It's comfortable with F-16s and F-35s. It is not comfortable in hand-to-hand combat on the street. And so that is what Israel is essentially trying to avoid. What you actually saw was Israel in a situation where the vulnerability of the Zionist idea was larger than ever, because essentially the Israeli military and intelligence establishment for the last year has been trying to overthrow Netanyahu. And essentially this process has served to force the military into the helm of controlling Israeli political power. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying that the military and intelligence establishment were trying to overthrow Netanyahu lightly. I'm saying that because it has been documented fact that Mossad encouraged its employees to participate in demonstrations against Benjamin Netanyahu. The plethora of Israeli military and intelligence figures who came out and have called for Netanyahu to stand down is known. So my point is this, that in the lead up to October 7th, what you had was the Israeli military heavily committed in the West Bank to fighting the new groups that had popped up. But what you also had was the particular resistance faction, which is charged with carrying out the operation on October 7th, not participating in the last 2 wars against Gaza. So 2 wars across the last 2 years have been carried out against Gaza, and that particular organization did not participate with the other organizations. And so Israel had a complacency about this particular organization. And so, you know, there's also been things published claiming that there are quite high-ranking people that are compromised within the Israeli military, and there was some level of information being passed to the resistance factions as well, and that led to the breakout of October 7th. And now we are where we are, where Israel is pummeling the civilian population, is cutting off electricity, fuel, and water from that population with the help of Britain and the United States and other NATO powers too. And what's happening within our countries is the crackdown on pro-Palestinian speech is getting even bigger. You know, you've seen the FBI contacting a large amount of Palestinians in the United States today, it's been reported, to talk to them about this. You've seen the Metropolitan Police in Britain calling up venues and asking that they close down shows like the Palestine Literature Festival, which even, as far as I understand, has had funding from the British Council in the past. Literally, a British government-funded literature festival has been shut down because the Metropolitan Police have called the venue. You've seen the Powell Music Fest to be held at a cathedral has been shut down because the Metropolitan Police called and said this will not be safe. So this is what we're seeing. These are the reverberations of October 7th, and it is. And as you know, the deletion of this video, 5.5 million views. You know, that's a lot of work that went into that video, and it's, you know, a song that I've been able to go around the world and sing, and people know it. For it to be deleted from YouTube in this way, that is symptomatic of what is the wider censorship to come. And yeah, please go ahead, Alan. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in because this is actually, it kind of feels like that old idea about disaster capitalism, the shock doctrine, that at any point, the powers that be will use big events to try to push forward whatever narrative they're looking for. And it's no coincidence that your song, Loki, has been kicked off of platforms right now. This isn't, you know, it didn't happen a couple of months ago. It's happening now because they think they can get away with it. We're seeing in the United Kingdom, for example, the Conservative government, they're looking into waving the Palestinian flag an offense. And this is even as they are instructing all government buildings up and down the land to fly the Israeli Israeli flags from the top of their turrets. France as well, what we're seeing there is quite similar. Today, France banned pro-Palestinian protests across the nation. We're not sure if that's going to be a permanent thing or not. It's not an idle threat either. We've seen water cannons used on pro-Palestinian demonstrations in Paris today. Foreign nationals are being told that they're going to be deported if they get caught participating in these. And yet even still, we're seeing huge demonstrations across France in support of Palestine. I saw one images of it on your profile, actually, Loki, from Place de la République. Very large demonstrations in show of solidarity for Palestine, which is perhaps not surprising considering France's gigantic Muslim population, mostly from North Africa.
All right, we'll be looking into this on Monday when we do protests, strikes, rallies, and riots. We do all that good information Monday night. And we're definitely going to have to tap into that, see what's going on. Maybe I'll have to go check some stuff out tomorrow.
Germany, which was already a bit of an S show when it came to free speech and when it came to Israel-Palestine, is really going in a very dangerous direction. The Chancellor Olaf Scholz told Parliament on Thursday that there were disgraceful images on our street of pro-Palestine protests. He's talked about having zero tolerance for anti-Semitism across Germany. And of course, while you don't want to see any instances of anti-Semitism, so often what they mean by that is solidarity with Palestine or opposition to Israel's expansionist policies or opposition to apartheid in general. And in fact, we're seeing that now whereby a lot of people in power are sharing images, for example, of graffiti saying "Free Palestine" on a wall or something, and saying that this constitutes anti-Semitism. When it's not on the wall of a synagogue or anything, it's just on a bridge or something. And that's supposed to be, representative of anti-Semitism. So I think even though the war is going on in the Middle East, there are going to be casualties in Europe, and one of those casualties is going to be free speech, and it's happening in the United States as well, with the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee reporting, as you said, Loki, that just dozens and dozens of people are calling into them, Palestinian nationals being detained by ICE, being visited by the FBI, mosques being raided. This is all going on in the West, supposedly in response to a relatively minor war happening across the other side of the world. But it feels like we're going to be losing a lot of our civil liberties, just as people over there will be as well.
To be honest with you guys, of course, Loki, I'm sure that you are deeply frustrated. I mean, I think that's a very simplified way of probably describing how you feel right now. But as a Palestinian who, when I first started Mint Press, had that song playing during our protests for Palestine, the taking down of your song is a direct attack against Palestinians in the West and, of course, people in Gaza. But for us who have been ongoing for over a decade now, Mint Press is over a decade old. For over a decade, we have dedicated our life, our careers, our reputations, everything. We put everything on the line to call out the permanent war state, the ruthless politicians that...
All right, I dropped the link in the chat for this video. Try not to watch everything of a whole, I'm trying not to watch a whole movie. I'm not trying to watch a whole clip. That's 38 minutes in. So I dropped that link. Go check it out. Loki's been doing some great work on Mint Press News. And if you're not following Mint Press News, I mean, why not? They're in the Middle East. They're checking things out. They're independent. There are no commercials in here because they are demonetized. So it makes it for good watching. No commercials. All right, let's do another history break.
Our mission in Coding Dojo is for redefining what's possible in our students' lives. If you are interested in getting into tech, we are 100% behind you to help you get there. Coding Dojo is...
All right.
Israel, the world's only Jewish state, located east of the Mediterranean Sea, and Palestine, the territory of the Arab population that hails from the Israel-controlled land, have long been known for their enduring conflict with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The tension between Israel and Palestine has been deteriorating in years, climaxing with many violent clashes between the two sides. To understand the roots of the Israel-Palestine conflict, we have to look back a few thousand years ago. Early history of Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In the 17th centuries BC, following the call of God, three patriarchs of the Jewish people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, settled in Canaan, a region approximating present-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, parts of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. The region later had the name the Land of Israel, the Promised Land, the Palestine region, or the Holy Land. In 1000 BC, King Saul established the Israelite monarchy, which then was ruled by King David, who made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom, and his son King Solomon, who built the first temple in Jerusalem. After the death of King Solomon, the United Monarchy was split into the Kingdom of Israel in the north, with Samaria as the capital, and the Kingdom of Judah in the south, with Jerusalem as the capital. The land became home to a majority of Jews, but then it was subject to numerous conquests of various groups, leading to the significant decrease of the Jewish population on the land. One of these conquests was conducted by the Roman Empire, who gave the name Palestine to Judah, intending to break the Jewish connection with the land of Israel. During this time, Christianity, which started as a Jewish sect, ultimately became a dominant religion toward the end of the Roman Empire. In the 7th century came an Arab conquest, beginning the spread of Islam. The Dome of the Rock was built on the ruin of the Second Temple, making Jerusalem the holy city to 3 monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. After Christians in Jerusalem were intensely persecuted by the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian empire with ambition to expand its territory, Christians in Europe launched several crusades to bring the holy city back to the hand of the Christians. During this time, many Jews were killed. Others were making pilgrimages everywhere, mostly in Western Europe. From the 16th century to World War I, the Holy Land, along with much of the Middle East, was ruled by the Ottoman Empire, an Islamic superpower. The land was unofficially called Palestine. At the same time in Europe, more and more Jews were joining a movement called Zionism, aiming to create a Jewish national state in its ancient homeland. Hence, in the first decade of the 20th century, tens of thousands of Jews moved from Europe back to the region. Israel and Palestine under the British rule. World War I exploded and ended with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Its land in the Middle East was carved by the British and French empires. The British then gave more independence for Iraq and Jordan, and the region remaining under the control of Britain was what it called the British Mandate for Palestine, where Britain promised to establish a Jewish national homeland under its Balfour Declaration, which went into effect in 1923. Tensions between the Jews and the Arabs who both claimed the land grew, which even led to acts of violence. By the 1930s, following the increasing Jewish population in Palestine due to the fear of persecution during the Nazi reign in Germany, the British limited Jewish immigration. In response, the Jewish militias formed to both fight the Arabs and resist the British rule. Then came the Holocaust throughout Nazi Germany, which claimed almost 6 million Jewish lives. After the war, more and more Jews then fled from Europe to Palestine to seek a homeland, escalating the tension with the Arabs. Overwhelmed by the situation, Britain began to withdraw from the region. The birth of the Israel state. After World War II, the UN proposed a plan to partition Palestine into 2 independent states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, with the city of Jerusalem becoming an international zone with a special status. However, the plan according to which the Jewish, accounting for only 1/3 of the population, was granted more territory, 56.5% of the land, was rejected by the Arabs. They began to form volunteer armies throughout Palestine. Less than 1 year after that, as Britain completed its withdrawal from Palestine, Israel declared itself an independent state, marking a new, bloodier chapter in the struggle between the Jews and the Palestinian Arabs. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Right after the announcement of an independent Israel, a war between the Arabs and the Jews broke out, which was known as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The war involved 5 recently independent Arab nations: Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, the Arab League, who invaded the region in an attempt to establish a unified Arab Palestine. However, a ceasefire agreement was reached a year later in which more than 2/3 of historic Palestine, including the West Jerusalem, belonged to Israel, while Jordan occupied East Jerusalem and the area known as the West Bank, and Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip. As a result, more than 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from the land where they lived for centuries on the day that they call Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. With the deteriorated dispute between the Jews and the Arabs, there came more wars and fighting in the following decades. The 60-Day War. It was in 1967 when the 60-Day War broke out after a volatile period of diplomatic friction and skirmishes between Israel and its neighboring Arab states, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. This brief war ended with the victory of Israel, giving Israel control over the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. Sinai was later returned to Egypt under the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty. After the war, most Palestinian refugees and their descendants were not allowed to return to their homes, but had to live in Gaza, the West Bank, and neighboring Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The First Intifada and the Oslo Accords.
You like that bone? I got a great price on it.
Did you see my tail when that Chewy box showed up?
Oh, I saw it.
My tail goes
The rising number of Israelis settling in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and Gaza gave rise to the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, first founded in Cairo, Egypt in 1964 to create a liberated Palestine in Israel. The PLO launched attacks on Israel from its base in Jordan. It was then forced to move from Jordan to Lebanon, starting to carry out acts of terrorism against Israel. Fighting went on for years, including the Israeli invasion of Lebanon to kick the PLO out of Beirut. The PLO eventually agreed to divide the land between Palestine and Israel, but there were still more and more Jewish settlers moved into the Israel-occupied Palestinian territories. In 1987, a violent Palestinian uprising was ignited, starting from the Jabalia refugee camp after an Israeli Defense Forces truck collided with 2 Palestinian civilian vans, killing 4 of them. This was known as the First Intifada. This bloody conflict, resulting in hundreds of deaths, triggered a peace process with the signing of the Oslo Accords by Israel and the PLO, the Oslo I Accord signed in Washington, D.C., and the Oslo II Accord in Taba, Egypt. According to the Oslo Accords, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas. Area A was exclusively controlled by the Palestinians. Area B was controlled by both the Palestinians and Israel. Area C was fully controlled by Israel. The Second Intifada. Though further peace talks continued in 2000, the Israelis and Palestinians could not reach agreements on issues like the status of Jerusalem, rights of refugees, and the increased Jewish settlement in Palestinian lands. Ariel Sharon, a Jewish Israeli who would later become Israel's prime minister, visited the Temple Mount, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The action was deemed offensive by many Palestinians, and the Second Intifada broke out. The violence ended with Israel's withdrawal from Gaza, but continued to settle in the West Bank. Israel conflict with Hamas. Hamas is a Sunni Islamist militant group aiming to destroy the state of Israel and create an Islamic state. After the armed conflict between Hamas and Fatah, who managed the PLO, Hamas split from the Palestinian Authority and gained power in the Gaza. Israel put Gaza under a suffocating blockade, leading to several bloody wars between the two groups in the Gaza Strip, including Operation Cast Lead, Operation Pillar of Defense, and Operation Protective Edge. In 2014, Hamas and Fatah reached agreement to form a national unity government. In 2018, the U.S. Embassy was relocated from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was deemed by the Palestinians as a signal of American support for Jerusalem as Israel's capital. 2021, the conflict between Israel and Palestine was reassumed by a series of hostile events in East Jerusalem, leading to several acts of violence until a ceasefire deal brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations came into effect on May 21st. Peaceful though it may seem now, the complex and long-lasting territorial dispute between two states is a ticking time bomb that can explode any time. Thanks for watching. If you find this information useful...
2 years ago. This video was made 2 years ago. And that is all the Israel-Palestine information I can handle in one night. I think that's more than anybody should ever handle in one night. Alright. So let's do something a little different. Let's take a comedy break.
You ready to back down?
No thanks. I'll say stuff about Biden over the thing.
Okay. I want to bite you so much. They told me Madonna's Dill Donut Boy is here, so where is he? Francois is a cool name.
Did you bring your skeleton card? Oh, you don't know what that is? You ought to be embarrassed.
Yeah, sure.
You ought to be embarrassed.
I'm
You ought to be embarrassed.
How are you?
You ought to be embarrassed, son.
Sure,
You got
man.
me?
Well, that's your opinion.
Ass. You're an ass.
Yeah, you're very formal. Quite a gentleman, aren't you?
To spark all your praise, I do headstands. I wandered to here. How'd you get there? How do I get to the patio? Well, geez, you're tall. Rock on, rocket fart.
Just watching that guy, who knows what he's saying?
Moisture, no. Hey, I want your hair. Is that weird to say? You're not me.
What? I don't know this.
Hey, you take my knife, then you're cutting my chicken. You got owls around here?
Pretend you liked what I said.
Oh, Mr. President. The owls went out the door behind us, I think. Listen, I have the thing. I never met you. So how do I give you the tip? Yeah, we shouldn't talk all that stuff right now. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll talk later, Hey, I'm sorry. He had quite a scent. I want a huggy. Come here. You smell neat, like a magpie. So good. Oh, is this the talented man? Oh. It's poppin', sweet mama. Hey, let me pay your check. You're beautiful.
Thank
Hey,
you.
listen, I got a tetanus shot right here. Oh, I sensed you. Dorito.
So we're supposed to make Joe not ask questions.
Got it. Hey, I'm Rocky Flanagan. Good to meet you. I don't see your shadow. Is this the right place to be? I'm Grizzly Newmac. Yeah, seriously, y'all can call me Hawaiian Brown, but never at night.
Now you lose a thumb.
Where do I go? Well, this way? Okay. Over here now? No? Oh. Doug Jenkins. Hello, I'm Richard Theismann III. You know, the soul of America is the gray brown on some of your sheets. Hey, don't tempt me to cry any tears on your towels, on your gooseberry towels. Ted Picard is here. That isn't really... You know what? I'll just go with it. Let me introduce you to the greatest marionette talent representative, Vashti Bodine.
I'm not... No, no.
What a spectacular performer. Hey, why is there a sloth over there? Oh, wait, that's just Mitch. Rap performances. Tonight it's Overlord and the Jersey Jives. Last week I saw Democritus and the graduation of Morgan Kane. No bull, y'all. My eardrum heads are about entirely broken.
You hear this?
Soap! Stone! What the hell's that? Why did I say it? Okay, how come I'm freezing here? Oh, what was I gonna tell you? I forget. Say what? Oh yeah, it's fixed the economy time. So tonight I'm calling for this, where everybody gets $35.
Yes.
Because 75% of $30 is $80. Look! Hey babe, look at the flying cloud. I'm sure you're seeing the same dogs I am, right? Look at the grumpiness of old Americans. You guys are dragging me down. We could always have a banana. Choppy chop a banana. Break up a banana. Because the joys of the banana last several years. You know? Seriously, I mean, what the heck? Cows are people too, aren't they? That's why I got a donkey in my office.
Nuh-uh, you do not.
It's a poster.
You should have ligers.
Hey, ligers are only in fiction.
But that's what you think.
What you need is percussion. If you have friends who fancy percussion, then play as much shaker as you can. If you're crying there just waiting at the hospital, I will defeat Tony. If he was wrestling for something here, I'd drop him. I'd defeat Tony. I would. I'd make a liger take him away.
You don't deserve ligers.
Hey guys, very soon after this, I'm buying millions of ligers. Oh, there's the loudest buzz sound in my ear, because sometimes I get like this thing in my ear, you know? But normally not. Hey, remember how golden ice was in 2 different flavors?
Yes.
Well, not me. I don't even know what golden ice is. Hey, folks, can you talk about how you're standing up so much? Are there spiders? Spiders? Ooey, those live in the darkness. A lot of your homes always smell like dog, and you don't even know it. Check it out. Harry Styles just bought the Titanic. Is that true?
I don't know.
Oh, wow, that's by a ghost. Ooh, it's okay, you're at the fair. But to be honest, Ghost, I need you to know the lights are dim because it's not the fair. It's not the fair. Well, hey, you know what? Yeah, I spotted a female ghost this day last year. Is she your sister? What? Bog Lorena. That ghost is wicked. He's got Bigfoot smile, drinking a 45. No touching the pony! He's lethargic! I leave you with this. The Goblin Swarm's lead captain is on shrooms. I go this way? What'd I do? Hey. Oh. Okay, now do I go that way? Why are you on me? Maybe that's a silly question, huh?
Oh, really?
If you don't stop it right now, I'm going to tell Mike Pence.
That's sad, actually.
Bog Lorena, every time I see this guy, I want to slap an asterisk. A heavy, low-weight suit.
Hey, Poppy.
Now I can go get a big print done of that. Hey.
What are you doing?
Bog Lorena, what is that? That smells foreign to me. Bog Lorena, you're looking good. Bog Lorena, you know, I mean, that's what's up. Bog Lorena.
The drunk changeling, in a marvelous frenzy, said over and over and over to us, "You are sad. You are sad. You are sad." His musky scent The sun and hot beer made us feral.
To spark all your praise, I do headstands. I just hold them longer than a
I love those, sorry.
I thought online degrees weren't as respected.
Not at all, actually. Alright. Running out of energy here. 3 hours, that sounds right. I don't have the stamina for this anymore. Yes, it takes stamina to sit here and...
All right. Yuna, please take cover. If you are in a position to do so safely, you can explain to us what we're happening. If you are not in a position to do so safely, then please get to safety. Please take cover. If you are in a position to do so safely, you can explain to us what we're happening. If you are not in a position to do so safely, then please get to safety.
Alright. And that was the last of the Hamas talk tonight. We will be doing a segment of government secrets while I go find my pipe and get another pipe to smoke them, the piece of the pipe. Alright. From here, government secrets, let's go to some very depressing, upbeat news. And then I think that's how we'll kind of end the show tonight. Is after this 25-minute segment from Government Secrets. But while we get this started, I got to run to my car, and I'll be back in a minute.
And now, Government Secrets, segment number 2, the rich history of the DARE program.
Let's see if I can get this image to come up. Nope. That did not show up. Okay. Never mind then. Anyway, you remember DARE, right?
Yes.
Everybody remembers DARE if you're in the United States at any point. There's a image from 1987. That's around the time I remember it. Police officers would come to your school and educate you on drugs and tell you how to report people for drugs. And so let's see where to begin. So this is an article by Slate put this together, but when 11-year-old Crystal Grendel was called into the counselor's office at her Searsport, Maine elementary school in 1991, she didn't expect to be asked if her parents used drugs. After thinking it through and likely following some pressure, Crystal reported her parents smoked marijuana once in a while. The counselor, after pulling Crystal out of class multiple times over the next few days to inquire how she was doing, suggested Crystal go to the police station to tell the sergeant, the school's DARE officer, about her parents' drug use. And especially for those in other countries who might not know the timeline, marijuana is legal in a bunch of the United States now, but was very much not so in the 90s. And they've now recommended that it be dropped down on the schedule of drugs, but I believe still to this day, or at least until the last few months, it was the equivalently illegal and at the top level of drugs, Schedule 1 drug, like cocaine and meth and everything else. Wow. The following day, the sergeant, along with 2 other DARE officers, came to the school to interrogate Crystal. This is a 11-year-old. About her parents' drug habits, playing on the trust that DARE officers had worked to facilitate with the students because they acted basically as teachers for special, certain days where they'd come in and have DARE programs. Gilway told her that if she cooperated by informing him about her parents' drug habits, there would be no consequences. Crystal the officer continued with a hardly veiled threat, telling Crystal that if she did not cooperate by snitching on her parents' use of marijuana, both Crystal and her parents would be in a lot of trouble. Gilway concluded with a warning. He told Crystal, often parents beat their children after their children talk to police. So she shouldn't tell her parents that she was talking to him.
Jeez.
So they brought in an 11-year-old, interrogated her, and told her that if she told her parents, she would likely be beaten by her parents. After Crystal finally complied and said that her parents used marijuana, the officers pushed her for more information about their schedules, the layout of the house. That afternoon, police raided their home, arrested her parents, and took Crystal and her younger sister to a distant relative's house, having neglected to make any plans for the girls following the raid. The incident led to a civil suit against the officers. The court found in favor of Crystal, and the judge admonished the police. But this apparently was not unusual for the DARE program, where they weren't just telling kids that, if you have anyone in your life that uses marijuana, they're basically, equivalent to Satan. And, they really did talk about marijuana like it was, equivalent to sacrificing neighborhood dogs in your living room.
Well, my parents, I saw my dad smoke weed a couple of times.
Did you report him, Graham? Like a good?
What am I? What are we living in a lawless society? I sent him to jail.
But so DARE nowadays, even though I didn't realize how late it ran, it was even after 2010. It was still going in some schools. But DARE's often, joked about now as something that did nothing. But in fact, it did a lot of things other than stop drug use. It did a lot of horrific. And so this article doesn't even get much into the propaganda aspect of it, which is just telling you that police officers are always your friend. They're always there to help. They're there to get the bad guy. And in many ways, in these classrooms, they were held up the same as teachers. Now, kids are very much come to trust their teachers, especially when they're under, teenage years. And the teachers are second to parents for many kids in terms of trust. And so to have these police officers come in and be like, this is equivalent to your teachers. These people are your friend. They're always here to help. It's just another level of propaganda. When, of course, in many people's lives, police ruin their lives. Police also murder a lot of people. But
I love it when a program actually creates way more problems than it solves. I mean, that's kind of that's what I'm really, I really.
You've heard the CIA's dengue program, have you?
Yes. You and I are on the same page. I love the dengue. As soon as the show's over, Lee, I have some paper bags full of mosquitoes with dengue that I'm going to just chuck off my balcony into my neighbor's backyard.
But so outside of just the propaganda outlet aspect, which I feel like you could do a whole episode on just that, but the program turned unwitting kids into the eyes and ears of the police. It integrated the police into the daily life of schools. This was before people had cops wandering the hallways of schools, which is now quite common, but back then was not, unless they were DARE officers. It also had the accompanying goal and potential consequences of making the police officer a trusted friend and mentor to millions of kids nationwide. What Los Angeles Police Department Chief Daryl Gates envisioned when he proposed a drug prevention program. Of course, this came from Los Angeles.
Daryl Gates is like the worst. He's the Alan Dulles of like police chiefs.
Is he?
He's so bad, dude.
So he came up with the DARE program, and he envisioned it in 1983. There was a program that would turn children themselves into frontline soldiers in the war on drugs. It would do so by turning the police into teachers, and the kids unwittingly are their surveillance against mainly their parents, maybe also their siblings if they have older siblings, but really their parents. The DARE curriculum suggested the DARE instructor was a trusted confidant who could be told when a student was found with drugs or knew someone using drugs. The DARE curriculum emphasized the 3 R's: recognize, resist, and report.
Oh, wow. Hey, kids, who wants to get a gold star for being a snitch?
Yeah. Who wants the snitch sticker? The snitcher.
You get a snitch sticker and you get a snitch sticker.
Who wants the scratch and sniff snitch sticker?
We're giving out Snickers bars, but they made it snitcher bars. Everybody gets a snitcher.
Yes. You get a sticker snitcher and a snitcher sticker. Stickers. All right. Recognize, resist, and report is the primary lesson the students to take home. Students took the message and ran with it. And I should just interrupt here and say this article does not mention, which we've covered in a previous episode, that the drug war in its entirety was designed not to help people with drugs, but to destroy certain communities. It began under Nixon, and it was really designed to just blow up and imprison Black communities and activist communities. And they succeeded in doing that to many people in many people's lives. And but that was the initial goal.
And they in Florida, they sent them dengue mosquitoes. Like, how much crap do they have to take? Like, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's all right.
But if they resist, they're terrorists.
Right, they're terrorists. Students took the message and ran with it because a lot of students are trying to do good. They're trying to impress their teachers. They're trying to impress their parents. Many of them are afraid of these people, as well as wanting to be liked. Many kids are afraid if they don't do what's they're told is the right thing, then their parents will fucking hate them or beat them or some shit. Students took the message and ran with it, not only reporting on those who offered them drugs, but also on family and friends who used drugs. Federal officials reinforced the message that snitching on friends and family members was an act of compassion. The former Secretary of Education and the nation's first drug czar, William Bennett, even encouraged children to turn in their friends for using drugs, saying, quote, "Let's be absolutely clear about this point. It isn't snitching or betrayal to tell an adult that a friend of yours is using drugs and needs help. It's an act of true loyalty, a true friendship. It's the right thing to do." But all of this is under the premise that someone smoking weed is equivalent to someone planning, a Columbine. Like, it's equivalent to acting like if there's a 15-year-old who, drinks a beer behind the school and then has a smoke of a joint, then he needs the cops involved in his life because he is about to just murder people.
I know this is in the 80s. I mean, this is like
through the 90s as well.
40, 50 years after like Reefer Madness, which is hilarious. Like, they're still smoking weed makes you a demon child that wants to eat puppies. So turn them all in, snitch them out, kids.
Well, yeah, and it's because, like I said before, this wasn't really about helping people who have a problem with drugs. There could be help for people that have problems with drugs, and I have no problem with those people getting help for their problem. This is about destroying communities, imprisoning people. I would imagine, although here's the thing, there's not a lot of data on how many people were arrested due to the DARE program. I imagine most of those records are not even kept. But then on top of that, there's certainly not data on how many of those arrested by the DARE program were black families as compared to white families. And I imagine there's a lot of racism on that front as well. So again, drug war designed to destroy certain communities.
And I mean, this, like, I would love to dig deeper on this because I have a hard time believing that the private prison industry wasn't somewhere involved in this program. They didn't.
When did private prisons become a thing? I don't even know.
Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're definitely a thing in terms of drug laws. But Glenn Levant, former LAPD deputy chief and executive director of DARE, the nonprofit organization that oversaw DARE operations across the country, related that students told DARE officers and school officials about parental cocaine use on a weekly basis. Because, I don't know if you've ever met anyone who's ever done any cocaine, but they're equivalent to a serial murderer. Absolutely. And there was a notorious DARE question box placed in every classroom, which students could use to submit information anonymously to the DARE officer. While the question box was not advertised as a place for students to report on parental drug use, it often functioned in that capacity. Proving children with a means to report abuse and violence may have been laudable. Providing children with a way to report abuse may have been laudable, but the line between ensuring child safety and executing police surveillance was very blurry. DARE was turning kids into informants. While it's unclear how widespread students turning in friends or family members for drug use became, anecdotal evidence from across the country highlights the insidious nature of using police officers as teachers who were meant to facilitate trust between kids and police. And, this is the propaganda aspect. It also gets kids to think that cops are the answer to every problem. No matter how small, call the cops. Call guys with guns to come running in. No matter how tiny the issue is, someone next door with playing loud music. Well, clearly guys with guns need to handle this.
Well, I mean, obviously you need guys with guns when, like, someone's just taking the stress off by smoking a plant. Like, that definitely needs lethal force.
Yeah. That's why even if it's a cigarette, I still call the cops just to be safe.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll just call in an airstrike. If it's too loud.
Just call in a drone.
Bombing. Yeah. I'll just, if my neighbors are playing loud music past about 9:30, I'm just napalm them. They're done. Like, it's over.
Sergeant Robert Gates suggested that arresting drug-using parents was a positive outcome. Here's the thing. Let's suspend our criticism for the moment of just the surveillance aspect of this. let's even suspend our criticism of the idea that someone who does weed or something has to go to prison, has to be locked behind bars. Let's suspend that for 1 second and say, this still must have just destroyed relationships and lives. Like,
and
what
families.
do parents
I mean,
think if their kid gets them locked in prison? Like,
I mean, imagine then decades later. I'd love to know, like, decades later, like, what's going on. Like, yeah, I was 9, 10 years old and I saw my dad and mom smoking, you know, they had a bong and then they just now got out of jail and it ruined my, like, look at the,
they never trust me. I never trust anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Carnage. You know, my dad, is your dad alive? No, he got shanked in prison because I ratted him out because the DARE program told me to. And he's dead. And I didn't go to college as a result. And that's why I have a face tattoo. But I'm glad I did what the DARE guy said.
And that's also why I shank anyone in a blue uniform I come across, which includes mailmen. So that's been a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I've shanked a couple of Amazon guys. It's been pretty nutty over here.
So this sergeant says it's a positive outcome. He says arresting drug-using parents. He says, in such environments, there are usually no morals, values, or training for the child. That's right. If you have ever had a parent who smoked weed once, there are no morals, values, or training for the child. He says, my personal opinion is that an arrest is the best thing that could ever happen to that parent. Marijuana could lead to harder drugs, which in turn could lead to death. What may turn out to be negative for the parent is a positive for society. You know what the number one gateway drug to drugs is? Alcohol.
Yeah.
Should we
I
lock
know.
up everyone who
It's
drinks
like,
beer?
how nuts is this? And first of all, thank you, Annabelle Corley, for supporting the show. Thanks, Lee, for another amazing effort to stop drug use being a monumental success. So if we understand this correctly, are your parents just drunk, out of control? That's cool. But if they smoked a little weed,
right,
lock them up. Alfred
Thank
Das
you, Alex,
Lipe,
as well.
thank you. I've thought about private prisons. They should make money based off of recidivism. Now, not now, prisoners jail. But they definitely arrest non-violent, non-criminals. Then jail a granny. She'll never return. Get paid.
Yeah, private prisons just encourage arrest. And they also, I mean, a lot of what courts do is decide when to let people out of prison. And there's an incentive to keep them in as long as possible because they have contracts with these private prisons.
They get paid. They get paid. Yeah. It's so.
So while many parents supported DARE, others were more weary. In 1992, Gary Patterson, who sounds like a fucking angel, a parent in Fort Collins, Colorado, formed an organization called Parents Against DARE. I know that sounded like I was saying that sarcastically, but no, he sounds like an angel. Parents Against DARE chapters grew quickly, spreading to at least 28 states in 1992. Many parents were weary of the use of police officers in schools. Quote, it's a statewide police network run out of the Attorney General's office. One Minnesota parent said, I don't want the police or the school listening information about what's happening in my house without my knowledge or my consent. The stuff of Orwellian fiction. This is Big Brother putting spies in our homes. The lessons learned in DARE classes led to students telling DARE officers about parents or friends. In Caroline County, Maryland, for instance, a mother and father spent 30 days in jail after their daughter informed her DARE officer they had marijuana plants in their home. Oh, my God.
Uh-oh.
Which, ironically, Maryland now has just fully legalized, including recreationally. In Boston, 2 different students tipped off the police and walked out of their homes with their DARE diplomas in hand when the police arrived to arrest their parents. The police arrested their parents and gave them DARE diplomas at the same time. For those listening on the podcast, Graham has a look of stunned silence.
Wow. I really want to interview these kids today and go like, and are they like, yeah, horrible mistake. I was propagandized. Or are they like, glad I did it. The old man locked them up. Glad we could like.
We have information on one of them in a second.
Oh.
And in Boston, sorry, I did that one. In another instance, a student in Inglewood, Colorado, called 911 when he found marijuana on a bookshelf in his home. The child proudly announced to the 911 operator, I'm a DARE kid. A 9-year-old in Georgia told a reporter after informing on her parents' drug use, quote, at school, they told us that if we ever see drugs, call 911 because people who use drugs need help. And by the way, this is assuming that during these raids, none of these people were accidentally shot because that also happens a great deal.
Yes.
So this kid calls the cops, says, I thought the police would come to get this a 9-year-old, get the drugs and tell my parents that drugs are wrong. They never said they would arrest them. But in court, I heard them tell the judge that I wanted my mom and dad arrested. That's a lie. I did not tell them that. So a lot of these kids don't even know what it means to report someone to the police. They think the police is a good guy. He's going to come and he's going to talk to them about drug use or something.
You're going to get mommy and daddy help. Yeah, I'm going to help. Yeah. And then here comes the help. Get down.
Right.
You know?
Helicopter help.
Yeah.
DARE's effort to humanize police officers and make them, this is the propaganda aspect, make them into trusted friends and mentors, enabled cops to become part of kids' lives and obscured the reality. Just a few more points here. As late as 2010, stories of kids, that amazed me. I didn't know this shit was still going in 2010. Stories of kids turning in their parents continued to crop up when an 11-year-old in South Carolina reported on his parents' marijuana use that year, even bringing a joint into school as proof. Following a DARE lesson, police arrested the kid's parents and social services removed the and his sibling from the home, which I'm sure was the best thing for them. Absolutely. Yes. Even if it's happening in their own home with their own parents, they understand that's a dangerous situation because of what we're teaching them. Here's the update on one of them. The first one I mentioned, Crystal Grindle. A year after the incident, Crystal told a reporter following up on the case, I would never tell on them again. Never, never, never. She also reported that she gets scared seeing police drive by her house. The distrust and fear stayed with Crystal years later. She told a reporter 6 years later, so I guess by then she's like 17 or something. She said, quote, it makes it hard for me to trust anybody. People I thought I could trust let me down. So if anyone thinks the DARE program did nothing, it did completely destroy the trust of a lot of American children.
And destroyed their families and homes. So there's like a double win. It's like
it destroyed many families and homes. And it did, honestly, because most kids obviously did not report anyone. But for all those kids, it did a wonderful thing of propaganda, which was just making children who become adults think that cops are just the mommies and daddies of society, and you should call them for help whenever anything goes even slightly wrong.
Wow. Well, dare to be great. Sounds
and
like
this is how you end up with the largest prison state in the world. 2 million people locked up. Something like 65 or 75% or 70% of them have never been convicted yet of anything. They're awaiting trial or other situations. So, millions of people locked up for many of them for zero reason.
Wow. America, it's a great country.
Land of the free. Did I tell you?
It's the land of the free unless you smoke a plant.
The land of a free unless you have alcohol open in public.
Yes. Right. It's the land of the free unless you say something the government doesn't like on a social media platform, then they'll shut it down.
Thank you, folks, for joining us. We have an extra segment at Patreon today, patreon.com/government secrets. That is how we keep this show going. You'll notice we have no ads at all, and that's because you guys join up at patreon.com/government secrets, and not at all because no advertiser wants anything to do with us. And
yeah, absolutely. It's people funded. It's because we have all these advertisers that want us to talk about CIA and how
they are falling all over themselves to support this show, and we said no. We
don't want 6- and 7-figure ad deals with big companies like Coca-Cola.
We want 3-figure deals with with the people.
That hot 3-figure money, it just comes steaming in every month.
But keep the show going, folks. I hope you want to join up at patreon.com/government secrets, and there's merch there. There's a government secrets mug and shit, and you also get all of our extra segments, which there's 40 some extra segments that you.
All right. We are going to finish with some calming after 3 hours of music, or 3 hours of news and politics and news and just depressingness. We're going to finish with a live stream of a watering hole in the Nambia morning desert, sunrise here in Nambia, and listen to some Soja music. So that is how I'm going to finish my stream tonight. I think this is maybe how I'll do it from here on out. Let me know what you think.
were young or so. In our lives we borrow. Feel it, the feeling, yeah. And I remember every day. Sometimes it's too much to take. I break down without no heartache. And I mean it, and I mean it. If I could spend the rest of my life with my people, I would do it over and over again. Leave it up to them to build up on their steeple. Leave it up to us to build up on our friends. If I could spend the rest of my life with my people, I would do it over and over again. I live in my mind and I know there's no equal. When I'm falling out, yo, they pull me back in. They say we've had fun, but let this go. This music don't go deeper, no. But we think we could help this world if only we tried. But we grow up, at least that's what they say. We can't do this when we pray. I tell myself every day that none of that applies. If I could spend the rest of my life with my people, I would do it over and over again. Leave it up to them to build up on their steeple. Leave it up to us to build up on our first. If I could spend the rest of my life with my people, I would do it over and over again. I live in my mind and I know there's no equal. When I'm falling out, yo, they pull me back in. Yeah. All I really need is all I've ever seen. Only thing that works for me is the feeling, feeling. And when we turn to leave and others turn to be, it's always been on my sleeve. And I mean it, and I mean it. If I could spend the rest of my life with my people, I would do it over and over again. Leave it up to them to build up on their steeple. Leave it up to us to build up on our friends. If I could spend the rest of my life with my people, I would do it over and over again. I live in my mind and I know there's no equal. When I'm falling out, yo, they pull me back in, pull me back. Pull me back in. Pull me back. You always pull me back, yeah.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really? First up, we've got Shake Video Man.
Just like the land that bears the name Africa, love is on my mind. It's for everyone, no matter where they're from. Love across all lines. Like the feeling of how the season changing. Love is a memory. In these last days when unity bears in, truth, love, speak. I need true love. How do you know? Will I what you mean to me? Where does it show as I live and I breathe? In the valley of the shadow, I know that you'll be higher defense, higher conquer death, and I conquer enemy. What is love really if it only affects one aspect of life? That's like a musician who only accepts his own musical time. That's like a preacher who only respects Sunday morning and not Saturday night. That's how this soldier can come to reflect that love is more than a man and a wife. I mean, I need true love. Where do you know what I watch you doing to me? And does it show as I live and I breathe? In the valley of the shadow, I know who you'll be. Higher defense, higher conquer death, and I conquer envy. In a time of plenty, it's gonna keep me strong. Things get tough and I keep cooling. It's gonna keep me strong. When I and I cup is empty, it's gonna keep I strong. When I and I cup is full, hey, I keep I from your temptation. Come on, true love, but do you know what you mean to me? True love, where does it show as I live and I breathe? In the valley of the shadow, I know who you be. Higher defense, higher conquer death, and I conquer the enemy.
As if for a beer, say you want me bitch gun. Like you don't know that I'm a vegetarian. Is this a love or an infatuation? Cause
you think I'm alone, but everyone's around. You think I'm home, but I'm really out, yeah. You think I'm out, but I'm really at home. And it seems that you don't know me no more. You think I'm alone when everyone's around. You think I'm home, but I'm really out. You think I'm out, but I'm really at home. And it seems that you don't know me. You don't know. Now, you don't know now. All that I've learned is all I'm taking. Now with me, never will I wait for too long again. You can take all old roses with you, cause I've got new gardens. I must go. Oh, you think I'm alone, everyone is around. You think I'm home, but I'm really out, yeah. You think I'm out, but I'm really at home. And it seems that you don't know me no more. You think I'm alone when everyone's around. You think I'm home, baby, I'm really out. You think I'm out when I'm really at home. And it seems that you don't know me no more.
You can't hold me no more, cause I got place to go. And anywhere that I go, I got people I know. I wanna see you every day knocking at my door. But first, I really wanna let you know that this is a troubled world that we live on. And the Almighty Creator put me on a mission, so you can walk with me on this mortal creation. And we're gonna be till I reveal our vision, cause
think I'm alone, everyone is around. Oh, you think I'm home, really out. And you think I'm out, really at home. And it seems you don't know me no more. You think I'm alone when everyone's around. You think I'm home, but really out. Yeah, you think I'm out when I'm really at home. And it seems that you don't know me no more. You don't know no more. You don't know now. You don't know now. Oh yeah, you don't know now. Oh yeah, you don't know now. Oh yeah, I mean, you don't know me no more, dog. Open my eyes, each morning I rise to find the truth. I know that it's there. I'm lucky to breathe, I'm lucky to feel. I'm glad to wake up, I'm glad to be here. With all of this world and all of its pain, all of its lies and all of its letdowns, I still feel a sense of freedom. So glad I'm around, it's my freedom. Can't take it from me. I know it won't change. But we need some understanding. freedom, can't take it from me. I know it won't change, but we need some understanding. I know it'll be alright. It's my freedom, can't take it from me. I know it won't change, but we need some understanding. 'Cause I wait on you, 'cause you wait on me. So I wait on you. We really gotta stop. I wait on you. You wait on me. I wait on you. I open my eyes. Each morning I rise to find it.
Calming way to end the show. Looking at some critters, a little reggae. I could just sit here and watch this whole fucking thing. Like if this took off, if me watching critters took off, I'd be a very happy person. Just sitting here baked watching critters. That'd be pretty cool. Pretty cool. Alright. Well, that concludes this. I will be doing setting up the new computer tomorrow, guys. And say goodbye to this broken thing. Hopefully things will be fast and smooth, and I'll get the new camera set up, same microphone, but yeah. Very, very excited, guys. Ooh, what's that? That looks fun. We should throw that on the watch next. Save that to a watch later. Good stuff. All right. Yeah, that was a pretty good clip there. All right, good stuff. Good night. Thanks for watching now. Thanks for watching later. See you guys. We'll try to get a couple nights. Like I said, I'll be doing this maybe 5 or 6 nights the first few weeks, and then as soon as we get things kind of smoothly rolling, I want to cut it back to 3 nights this winter and just have a nice conversation with our regulars. So if you guys are watching this later, figure out a night that you want me to, a must stream night that for you, and the first time I catch you live, give it to me, and I'll try to make sure my regulars get a night that they want, because I want to cut it back to like 3 nights a week. I'm not a streamer, but I enjoy hanging out with you guys once in a while. And that being said, I am calling it for the night. Let's do my other string here. Wavy, wavy. Peace out, peoples. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.